Hello, my dear friends. A Neanderthal woman could survive a birth, then be put in danger by the dirty fingers cleaning the blood from her skin. There was no soap waiting beside the fire, no clean cloth under the body, no safe place where sweat, waste, insects, old meat and birth fluids could be kept away from wounds. The same hands that pulled fat from animal hides might later wipe a newborn, check a swollen scalp, or press damp moss against torn flesh. What looks disgusting now was not a rare accident, but the way a body had to be managed when warmth mattered more than being clean. Tonight, you will step into the harsh hygiene of Neanderthal women, where the things meant to protect the body could also make it rot. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soothing background, and let's embark on this journey together tonight. If you look closely at Neanderthal women at the beginning of a cold morning, the first thing to notice would be what the night had left on their bodies. Smoke would not sit only in the shelter, it would sit on them. It could lie along the hairline, darken the skin near the nose, rest in the folds of the neck and cling to the arms that had been pulled under animal skins for warmth. Their faces might look tired before any work began, not because they had been careless, but because the fire had touched them all night. Neanderthal women depended on that fire, but their skin paid for it every morning. Warmth kept their bodies alive through cold hours, yet the smoke moved over sleeping faces and into loose hair. Fine soot could settle where skin was oily. The sides of the nose, the brow, the chin and the area behind the ears could catch small black marks. When women rubbed their eyes after waking, the soot could spread under the fingers. A quick wipe might clear the worst of it, but it would not. Their bodies also carried the sweat of yesterday. Neanderthal women may have spent the previous day walking across rough ground, gathering plants, carrying wood, scraping hides, breaking bones, lifting children, and sitting near heat while food cooked. Sweat could dry under the arms, beneath the breasts, around the waist, and between the thighs. Those areas were pressed by animal skins and warmed by body heat. By dawn, the sweat this was the kind of dirt that stayed close. It did not look dramatic from a distance. It hid in the soft places where skin folded, where movement rubbed one surface against another, and where air could not dry everything quickly. Neanderthal women would have felt it as itching, stickiness, roughness, and a sour smell rising when the body warmed again. But before cleaning themselves, Neanderthal women still had to use the same hands that were already dirty. Those hands might touch ash to wake the fire, pull a smoky hide away from the body, lift damp bedding, move wood, and pick up a child. Black dust could enter cracks around the fingers. Grease from yesterday could remain near the nails. A palm used to wipe the face might carry soot back onto the cheek. Their water could help, but only in small and careful ways. Neanderthal women could wet the fingers and rub around the eyes, mouth and nose. They could wipe the neck where soot mixed with sweat. They could clean the hands enough to remove the blackest ash. But cold water on the whole body was not a simple comfort. It could bite into the skin, it could leave the body shaking. It could make wet hair heavy and cold for hours. So the washing of Neanderthal women may often have been selective. The face first because smoke near the eyes could sting. The hands next because they touched food and children. The armpits, under the breasts, the belly folds, and the area between the thighs could be wiped when the itching became too strong to ignore. The back, the legs, and the thick hair might be left almost untouched because reaching them or drying them took too much effort. Their hair was one of the hardest places to keep clean. Smoke passed through it all night. Oil from the scalp held ash in place. Greasy fingers could move through the strands while pushing hair away from the face. Small pieces of grass, dirt, food, and hide fiber could catch there. Neanderthal women could separate the hair with fingers, pull away visible bits, and scratch the scalp where it itched. But washing the whole head meant losing warmth, and warmth mattered more than the feeling of clean hair. The skin under animal coverings had its own problem. Animal skins kept heat close, but they also held sweat close. Under the breasts, around the hips, and along the inner thighs, the body could stay damp long after the rest had dried. When dried sweat met soot and body oil, it could form a thin residue. As women walked, bent, carried and sat, that residue could rub the skin. Redness, soreness and itching could follow. The smell of Neanderthal women in the morning would not have been one simple smell. It could be smoke at the hair, old sweat at the folds, animal hide at the shoulders, grease on the hands and damp earth at the feet. These smells would mix with the smells of others nearby. They may not have been shocking inside the group, because everyone lived close to the same fire and the same skins. But the body still carried every layer. Even the first movements of the day could renew the dirt. When Neanderthal women stood, bent and pulled skins around the shoulders, old ash could fall across the chest and arms. Feet could press into cold soil, then bring damp grit back against the calves. The body was never separate from the ground, the fire or the skins nearby. What makes this harsh is not that Neanderthal women failed to clean themselves. It is that the body was constantly being used before it could be cleaned. Their hands had to work before they were washed. Their skin had to be covered before it was dry. Their hair had to stay warm even when it held smoke. Their comfort came after the needs of heat, food, children and movement. It was a cruel little irony that the fire-protecting Neanderthal women through the night also painted their faces with soot before morning truly began. For a modern person, it would be like waking after sleeping beside a smoky campfire, then trying to feel clean without soap, towels, spare clothes or warm running water. I find it unsettling to imagine how normal that sticky mix of smoke, sweat and ash must have become on their skin. Neanderthal women began the morning with old sweat dried into the folds of the body and fresh soot resting on the face and hair. Small wiping could remove the worst marks, but full washing could bring cold, shivering and hours of discomfort. The question waiting after this morning was simple: whether becoming cleaner could sometimes make the body less safe. Neanderthal women could have known that water was useful, but full washing was not always kind to their bodies. A stream might look clean from a distance, especially when it moved over stone and carried away ash, blood and loose dirt. Yet the water itself could be bitterly cold. In a warm season, touching it might feel sharp for a moment. In colder months, the same water could make skin ache within seconds. For Neanderthal women, the problem was not only getting wet. The problem was what happened after the body became wet. Hair could hold water for a long time. Thick hair near the scalp could stay damp even when the surface looked drier. Animal skins could be pulled back over the body, but the wet hair and wet skin underneath would keep stealing warmth. A body that had been uncomfortable because of dirt could become more uncomfortable because of cold. A full wash meant exposing the whole body. Neanderthal women would have had to loosen or remove animal skins, step toward cold water, bend, rub, rinse, and then return to warmth. During that time, skin that had been protected all night could meet cold air. The arms, chest, belly, thighs and back could tighten as the body reacted. Fingers could stiffen, teeth could chatter. A clean body was not useful if it could not warm itself again. The skin may have hurt almost immediately. Cold water on the face was one thing. Cold water over the shoulders, breasts, stomach and between the thighs was another. Sensitive areas already rubbed by sweat and skin could sting. Areas under the arms or around the hips might feel raw. If Neanderthal women had small scratches from grass, stone, hide edges or fingernails, cold water could make those cuts burn. Drying was the harder part. No soft woven towels were waiting beside the stream. There was no warm room, no spare linen, and no clean garment kept only for after washing. Water could be pushed away by the hands. A skin could be used to rub the body, but that skin might already carry smoke, grease, dirt, and old sweat. The attempt to dry clean skin could return old dirt straight onto it. Wet hair made the choice worse. Neanderthal women with hair soaked near the scalp could not simply step into a dry house and wait. Damp hair against the neck could chill the upper body for a long time. If the air was cold, it could make the head ache and the shoulders tense. Sitting near the fire was the only practical answer, but the fire gave back smoke, ash, and the smell of heated hide. So a full wash could become a slow trap. First came the pain of cold water, then came the shivering. Then came the long sitting near heat. While the body dried, smoke could settle again on the hair and face. Ash could rise from the ground. Animal skins could press their old smell back against damp skin. By the time warmth returned, the body might no longer feel fresh. Neanderthal women likely understood this through ordinary experience, not through explanation. If washing too much left the body shaking, the lesson was clear. If wet hair stayed cold until night, the lesson was stronger. If children or older women became weak after getting soaked, the group would remember. Cleanliness had to be measured against energy, warmth, and the danger of losing too much heat. Their choices may have changed with season. In mild weather, more water could be used. Women could stand in a stream, rinse legs, arms, hands and face, then sit in light or moving air until the skin dried. In deep cold, the same action could be foolish. Even a short rinse might leave feet numb and fingers painful. A full wash could demand hours beside the fire, and hours beside the fire meant less time for food, children, tools, hides, and movement. The body itself would guide the decision. Smoke near the eyes might need wiping. Hands that touched meat or blood might need rinsing. Sweat between the thighs might become too irritating to ignore. But the whole body did not need to be soaked every time one area felt dirty. Neanderthal women could clean in pieces because that was safer. The face could be wiped, the armpits could be rubbed, the groin could be cleaned quickly, the rest could wait. Smell alone may not have been enough to risk cold. Their bodies carried smoke, sweat, animal fat and soil because those smells came from survival tasks. A woman who smelled of smoke had been near warmth. A woman who smelled of hide had been covered. A woman who smelled of sweat had worked. The scent was not pleasant, but it was not always treated as a crisis. Hunger, cold, injury and children mattered more than feeling fresh. There was also the problem of privacy. Full washing meant more exposure. Neanderthal groups lived close together. Women, men, children, and older people may have shared the same shelter and the same fire. Washing the whole body could not always be done quietly or separately. Small wiping could happen under skins, behind a turned shoulder, or near the fire. Full bathing required more space, more time, and more acceptance from the group around them. When skin stayed dirty, it could still cause trouble. Dried sweat could irritate the folds of the body. Soot could clog around the nose and hairline. Dirt could sit in scratches. Yet the danger was slower than the danger of cold. Neanderthal women may have accepted a layer of dust and old sweat because it allowed the body to stay warm, steady, and able to work. Being slightly filthy could be the safer choice. Their bodies remembered that balance each morning. The cruel joke was that water could promise relief, then punish Neanderthal women with cold before the dirt was even gone. For a modern person, it would be like trying to bathe in an icy river, then drying off with yesterday's smoky blanket beside a campfire. I find it striking that their bodies may have had to choose between smelling bad and losing warmth. A full wash could take away smoke and sweat, but it could also leave Neanderthal women cold, wet, and weak, so their cleaning often stayed small, aimed only at the places that became too itchy or painful to leave alone. That careful wiping would bring its own rough tools, damp moss, hard grass, and skin that could still be scratched raw. Neanderthal women may have treated washing as something small, careful, and practical, not as a full change from dirty to clean. Their bodies could carry smoke, dried sweat, ash, and old skin oil from many hours of sleeping and working near the fire. But when the morning work began, the whole body did not need attention at once. The places that burned, itched, or smelled strongest would probably come first. The face was one of the easiest places to clean. Smoke could sting around the eyes. Ash could gather at the corners of the mouth. Grease from food or fingers could sit beside the nose. Neanderthal women could wet the fingers and rub those areas slowly, removing the dirt that felt most obvious. A few passes across the brow, cheeks, and lips could make the face feel more awake, even if the skin still held a grey shadow of smoke. Their hands needed attention because their hands touched nearly everything. The same hands could lift children, break plants, handle meat, move stones, pull hides, and touch the face. Water could be scooped in the palms or carried in a small hollow of bark, bone, or stone. Neanderthal women could rub the fingers together, scrape dirt from under the nails, and wipe the palms on damp moss or grass. The result might look cleaner, but cracked skin and nail edges could keep grease and ash inside. The armpits could become uncomfortable quickly. Warmth gathered there under animal skins. Sweat dried there after walking, carrying, and sitting near heat. When the arms moved, the skin rubbed against itself. Neanderthal women might notice the sour smell first. then the itching, then the soreness. A little cold water pressed into that area could sting, but it could also loosen the sticky layer that made every movement unpleasant. Under the breasts, the same problem could become worse. Skin pressed against skin, heat stayed trapped, sweat could collect and then dry into a thin layer of salt and oil. Ash from the air could settle there when the body was damp. Animal skins could rub the area during walking or bending. Neanderthal women could lift the skin, wipe beneath it with wet fingers, moss or soft hide, then cover the body again before the cold became too much. The area between the thighs would have needed special care, but it was also one of the hardest places to clean comfortably. Sweat, urine, menstrual blood, body fluids and old dirt could remain there longer because air reached it poorly. Rough walking could make the skin rub until it turned sore. Neanderthal women might use only a little water, applied by hand, because pouring cold water over the whole lower body could be painful and risky. A quick wipe could reduce irritation without soaking everything. This kind of washing was selective. It was not about feeling fresh everywhere. It was about making the worst areas bearable. The face could be cleaned because smoke stung. The hands could be cleaned because food and children were touched. The armpits, under the breasts, and between the thighs could be cleaned because sweat and rubbing made them hard to ignore. Other areas could wait because they caused less immediate trouble. Their backs might stay dirty for a long time. The middle of the back was hard to reach without help. Smoke could settle there under loose hair. Sweat could dry along the spine. Dirt from sleeping skins could rub against the shoulders. Neanderthal women could twist an arm behind the body and wipe what could be reached, but much of the back would remain untouched unless another person helped. A place that could not be seen was easier to leave alone. The legs could also keep old dust. Feet and calves touched mud, ash, grass and stone through the day. Knees could collect dirt from crouching. Thighs could hold sweat beneath skin. But washing the legs meant wetting a large area, and wet legs could chill quickly. If the feet were numb from cold ground, adding water might make the discomfort sharper. It was easier to rub away mud when it cracked or flaked than to rinse the whole lower body. Hair was even less likely to be fully washed. Thick hair could trap smoke, grease, dust, and small bits of grass. Neanderthal women could pull out visible pieces with their fingers. They could scratch the scalp, separate strands, and remove clumps that felt too sticky. But soaking all the hair was a different matter. Wet hair near the scalp could stay cold for hours, and drying beside the fire meant filling it with smoke again. The tools for washing were whatever the body could tolerate. Moss could hold water and feel softer against sore skin. Damp grass could wipe away loose dirt, but dry grass could scratch. A small piece of soft hide could work like a cloth, though it might already carry old grease and smoke. Nothing was perfectly clean. Each material could remove one layer while leaving another behind. Neanderthal women had to judge pressure carefully. Rubbing too lightly might leave the itch in place. Rubbing too hard could open small scratches. Skin already softened by sweat could tear more easily. Areas under the arms, beneath the breasts, and between the thighs were especially vulnerable. A rough wipe could create a burning feeling that lasted longer than the dirt had. Cleaning could become its own injury. There was also the matter of time. A full careful wiping of every uncomfortable place took attention. Children needed feeding, food needed preparing, fire needed tending, tools needed moving. Neanderthal women could not always stop long enough to clean every fold of skin. A few urgent places were enough. The rest of the body could carry its old dust into another day. It was a bitter little irony that the places most in need of cleaning were often the places most likely to hurt when rubbed. For a modern person, this would be like replacing a bath with a handful of cold water, damp moss, and old smoky animal leather. You can almost feel how cleaning only the worst spots would become a habit, not because it was pleasant, but because it worked well enough. Washing for Neanderthal women could mean wiping the face, hands, armpits, breasts, and thighs, while leaving the back, legs, and hair mostly unchanged. That small routine could ease itching without soaking the whole body in dangerous cold. But when water was not enough, the dirt stuck harder, and the skin could meet rougher things than a wet hand. Neanderthal women could wipe away loose ash with water, but the dirt that truly stayed on the body was often heavier than dust. Animal fat, smoke, sweat, soil, and crushed plant matter could mix on the skin. Around the wrists, elbows, ankles, and knees, that mixture could dry into a stubborn film. It was not soft dirt waiting to be rinsed away. It could become a layer that clung to oil, hair, and cracked skin. There was no soap to break that grease apart. Cold water could move across the surface and carry away the darkest marks, but fat from meat, hides, and marrow would resist it. Neanderthal women handled animal bodies, cooked near fire, touched skins, gathered wood, and rubbed their own arms when cold. Grease passed from task to task. By evening, it could settle into the places where the body bent. The wrists may have been especially dirty. Hands moved through ash, meat, grass, dirt, and water, and the wrists followed every movement. When animal skins brushed against them, old grease could smear around the joint. When women wiped sweat from the face, the same residue could move upward. A thin dark ring could form where movement folded the skin again and again. Water might lighten it, but it would not always remove the slick feeling beneath. Elbows and knees could collect another kind of grime. Neanderthal women crouched, knelt, leaned, carried, scraped, and worked close to the ground. The skin there could be dry, thick, and rough from pressure. Dust could sit in the cracks, ash could stick to sweat. Animal fat could seal the mixture in place. When those joints bent, the dirt could stretch and split slightly, leaving dark lines in the skin. Lower legs and feet were no cleaner. Dirt from paths, mud near water, dry grass, and ash from the shelter could mark the calves and ankles. A simple rinse could remove wet mud, but dried grease mixed with soil would need rubbing. Neanderthal women might use a handful of grass, rough moss, damp bark, sand, or the edge of a dull stone. The aim was not beauty. The aim was to get rid of the layer that felt thick, itchy, or sticky. That kind of cleaning could hurt. Grass that felt soft in the hand could become harsh when pressed hard into skin. Sand could scrape away dried residue, but it could scratch. A dull stone could lift hardened dirt from an ankle or elbow, yet one careless push could break the skin. Neanderthal women did not need a deep cut for trouble to begin. A thin red line was enough for soil, ash, and old fat to enter. The skin under the dirt may already have been irritated. Sweat trapped under hides could soften it. Cold wind could dry it. Smoke could settle over it. Constant movement could rub it raw. When women scrubbed those places, the dirt and the skin could come away together. What started as cleaning could leave a patch that stung each time cloth, hide, grass, or fingers touched it again. Water could make the surface cleaner while leaving the deeper discomfort behind. The visible dirt might disappear, but grease could remain in tiny folds. The body could still smell of smoke and fat. A cleaned wrist could become dark again as soon as hands returned to the fire, meat, or skins. A scrubbed knee could collect fresh soil the moment women crouched near the ground. Cleanliness was not a lasting state. It was a short pause between dirty tasks. The lack of soap mattered because soap changes the way grease leaves skin. Without it, Neanderthal women had to rely on pressure, friction, and patience. They could rub harder, rinse again, scrape and rub again. Every extra movement increased the chance of soreness. A spot that had been dirty but harmless could become open and painful. In a world full of soil, raw meat, damp bedding, and insects, broken skin was never a small thing. The nails could become tools as well. Neanderthal women may have picked at dried grease around the wrists, or scraped dark lines from elbows with fingernails. That could work for the surface, but nails were not clean either. They had touched food, ash, hide, soil, and the body. When a nail broke the skin, whatever sat beneath it could be pushed into the scratch. Cleaning by hand could quietly place new dirt where the old dirt had been removed. Some residue may have simply stayed. If a patch did not itch too badly or block movement, Neanderthal women might leave it until it flaked off on its own. The body did not need to look clean to function. A dark elbow, greasy wrist, or dusty ankle was tolerable if the skin beneath did not burn. Survival rewarded enough cleaning, not perfect cleaning. Removing every stain could cost more comfort than keeping it. Still, certain places could demand attention. A thick band of grime around the wrist might crack when the hand moved. Dried mud on the ankle could pull against hair and skin. Grease on the knee could hold grit that scraped with every crouch. Neanderthal women would have known the difference between dirt that could wait and dirt that had become a problem. Cleaning began where the body complained the loudest. The most unsettling part is how ordinary the damage could be. No dramatic injury was needed. A rough handful of grass, a cold rinse, a little sand, and a few hard strokes could make tiny cuts. Those cuts could bleed lightly, then collect ash as soon as the hands returned to the fire. Blood, soil, and grease could mix before the skin had any chance to close. The body could become cleaner and more vulnerable at the same time. The small cruelty was that Neanderthal women sometimes had to damage the skin just to remove what had dried on it. In modern terms, it would be like scrubbing cooking grease from your arms with cold water, sand, weeds, and the blunt side of a stone. You can see why some dirt was probably left alone, because a dark stain was easier to live with than a scratch. Without soap, Neanderthal women could not wash away the grease that held ash and soil against the body. Rough cleaning could remove the hardened layer, but it could also leave red skin, broken skin, and places where new dirt could settle. Once those hands returned to meat, hides, children, and food, the problem would move from the skin into everything they touched. By the time meat was brought close to the fire, the hands of Neanderthal women could already be carrying several kinds of dirt. Ash sat in the lines of the palms, soil could remain beneath the nails, grease from skins might still cling to the wrists. Then the animal body added blood, fat, wet tissue, bone dust, and the heavy smell of raw flesh. Handling meat was not a neat task. A carcass could be opened with stone tools that cut, scraped, and tore rather than sliced smoothly. Small pieces of tissue could catch around the fingers. Blood could run over the hands and dry in the warm air near the fire. Fat could smear into the skin and stay there even after the red colour had been rinsed away. For Neanderthal women, hands were the tools used for almost everything. Those same fingers could pull meat from bone, lift marrow, hold cooked food, gather plants, wipe sweat from the face, clean a child, and touch sore skin. There were no separate gloves for butchering, cooking, washing, carrying, or care. One pair of hands had to move through all of it. Cold water could remove the most obvious blood. A woman could dip the hands into a stream, rub the fingers together, and watch red streaks fade into the water. But the deeper problem was fat. Animal fat could remain slick around the nails, between the fingers, and along cracked knuckles. It could hold tiny bits of tissue and dirt against the skin. Under the nails, the dirt could be worse. Nails could scrape hides, pick meat from bone, pull plant fibers, scratch the scalp, and clean dirt from other places on the body. After meat work, dark matter could sit beneath them. A quick rinse might not reach it. Pressing the nails into moss or grass could remove some of it, but not all. The palms could look cleaner than they were. Firelight was weak, and wet skin could shine in a way that made it seem washed. Blood lost its bright colour when diluted. Grease did not always stand out. A hand that appeared pale again could still smell faintly of old meat. When warmed near the fire, that smell might return more strongly. Food did not wait for perfect cleaning. After cutting meat, Neanderthal women might help divide it, carry it, cook it, or feed it to children. Fingers could touch food directly because containers were limited and hands were always available. Cooked meat, roots, berries, marrow, and softened plants could all pass through hands that had only been partly cleaned. Children needed those same hands. A child might be lifted with fingers that had touched hide, ash, and meat earlier in the day. A small face could be wiped with a thumb that still held grease near the nail. A mouth could be fed by hand. A dirty patch of skin could be rubbed away. The care was real, but the hands giving it were never fully separate from the work that came before. This did not mean Neanderthal women were careless. It meant there was no clean boundary between tasks. The body, the food, the child, the fire, and the animal all belonged to the same daily chain. One action led into another. Washing could happen between them, but it was often partial. The hands were cleaned enough to continue, not clean to a modern standard. The skin itself made cleaning harder. Repeated cold, scraping, and work could leave small cracks around the knuckles. Those cracks could hold blood and fat. Rough stone tools could nick the fingers. A thin cut might sting when water touched it, then darken again as ash settled over it. If a hand bled while handling meat, blood from the body and blood from the animal could mix on the same skin. The smell could last all day. Animal blood has a heavy scent, especially when mixed with fat, smoke, and damp hide. Neanderthal women could rub the hands on grass, rinse them in cold water, wipe them on skins, or hold them near smoke. Each method changed the smell more than it removed it. Smoke could cover meat odor, but the grease beneath could remain. Mouths and hands were close in daily life. A woman could pull cooked meat apart with fingers, place food into the mouth, then use the same hand to steady a child or move hair away from the face. The idea of not touching the mouth after raw meat would make sense today, but it would not fit easily into that world. There was no soap bowl waiting between every task. The risk was quiet because the danger could not be seen. The red colour might be gone, the palm might look clean, the child might stop crying after being fed. Nothing about the moment would announce that old fat or tiny bits of tissue remained, yet the hands could carry what the eye missed. In a place where wounds, mouths, food and children were touched constantly, invisible dirt mattered. When hands became too greasy, Neanderthal women may have cleaned them with friction. Sand could cut through slickness. Grass could wipe away larger pieces. Damp moss could hold water against the skin. A stone edge could scrape under a nail. These methods could work, but they could also roughen the hands more. The cleaner the fingers became, the more sore they might feel afterward. Some grease may have simply stayed until it wore away. Work against stone, wood, grass and hide could slowly remove it. Water could take away another layer. Smoke could change the smell. Time could dry what remained. But between those stages, the same hands continued touching food and bodies. Hygiene was not one event. It was a constant compromise made while life continued. The uneasy irony was that the hands used to keep children fed could also be the hands carrying traces of animal blood from the day before. For a modern person, it would feel like cutting raw meat, rinsing without soap, then feeding a child with the same fingers. You can feel how little separation existed between work, food, and care when there were no gloves at all. The hands of Neanderthal women could look clean after the blood was rinsed away, while fat and tiny pieces of tissue still stayed near the nails. Those same hands then touched food, faces, sore skin, and children because daily life left no separate tools for each task. And when those hands moved upward into the hair, another problem could begin there. Hair could go untouched by water for many days, not because Neanderthal women ignored it, but because washing the head could make the whole body cold. Smoke rose toward the roof each night and passed through loose strands. Oil from the scalp held that smoke in place. By morning, the hair could carry a dull smell of fire, animal skin, sweat, and old food. The head was a dangerous place to wet in cold weather. A face could be wiped quickly. Hands could be rinsed and shaken dry. Hair was different. Once thick hair became wet near the scalp, it could keep cold against the skull and neck for hours. Without towels, dry rooms, or spare clothing, Neanderthal women had few easy ways to remove that water. Sitting beside the fire helped, but it created another problem. Heat could dry the outer strands while the roots stayed damp. Smoke could pass through the hair again. Ash could drift into it. The same warmth that saved the body from shivering could fill the hair with the smell that washing was meant to remove. Clean hair might last only a short while before the fire claimed it again. Their hands carried more into the hair than smoke did. Fingers used to break meat, lift hides, move firewood, wipe sweat, and clean children could later push hair away from the face. Even after a rinse, animal fat could remain around the nails and knuckles. When those fingers moved through hair, they could leave thin streaks of grease behind. The strands could hold it quietly. Food could enter the hair in small ways. A woman bending near meat, roots, marrow, or cooked scraps could have loose strands fall forward. Children held close to the chest could touch sticky fingers to hair. Bits of plant fibre, ash, and dried food could catch near the temples or behind the ears. These pieces might be too small to matter at first, but after days they could make the hair feel heavier and rougher. Neanderthal women could still care for the hair, but care did not have to mean washing. Fingers could separate strands slowly. Larger pieces of grass or food could be picked out. A tangled patch could be pulled apart by hand. The scalp could be scratched where smoke and oil made it itch. This was a kind of cleaning, but it left the deep grease and old smell in place. The lack of a fine comb mattered. Fingers could find the obvious knots, but not every small piece hidden near the skull. A nail could drag through hair and remove a clump of dried dirt. It could also scratch the skin beneath. If the scalp was already irritated by smoke, sweat, and insects, hard scratching could open tiny cuts. Blood could dry into the hair and make a new sticky place for dirt. Long hair may have been useful because it gave warmth around the head and neck. It could also become a problem when it trapped too much. Smoke, grease, sweat, and old debris could gather close to the scalp. In cold months, keeping the head covered mattered more than making the hair pleasant. The hair was part protection, part burden, and part hiding place for everything the day left behind. When hair became too tangled, cutting may have been easier than washing. A stone edge could remove a small clump that had matted with grease, blood, or plant fibers. Pulling the knot apart might hurt more than cutting it away. Neanderthal women may have lost uneven patches this way, not for style, but because some tangles were no longer worth saving. The smell of hair could be stubborn. Smoke sits deeply in hair because hair holds oil. Animal fat from hands could make that hold stronger. Even if water touched the surface, the old odour might remain near the roots. When women warmed themselves by the fire, heat could release the smell again. A head that looked only dusty could smell of days spent beside flame and meat. There was also the problem of sleeping. Hair pressed into hides, grass, and old bedding through the night. It could collect loose fibres, skin flakes, ash and crumbs from the sleeping place. Turning the head could rub dirt deeper into the strands. By morning, the back of the hair might be more tangled than the front, and it was harder to reach without help. Other women could help with what one person could not see. Hair at the back of the head, behind the ears, and along the neck could be searched by another pair of hands. Large bits could be pulled free, knots could be separated, sticky strands could be judged for cutting. This kind of care was slow and close, but it was also practical. A group living together could not keep everybody entirely private. The scalp itself would have reminded them when the hair needed attention. Itching could grow under smoke and grease. Sweat could dry near the roots. Small insects or flakes of dirt could move or press against the skin. Neanderthal women may have used fingernails to find the exact place, scratch it hard, then smooth the hair back down. Relief could come quickly, but so could soreness. A complete hair wash was probably saved for moments when warmth, water, and time made it possible. In milder weather, women could rinse more freely. In deep cold, they likely avoided soaking the head unless the discomfort became worse than the chill. The decision was not about looking clean. It was about whether the body could afford wet hair. The easiest solution was to accept a rougher head, a smoky smell, and a few visible bits until the discomfort became too strong. Hair did not need to look fresh each day. It needed to stay warm and manageable. The quiet irony was that hair kept Neanderthal women warmer, while also holding smoke, grease, and old food to the skin. A modern person might think of sleeping beside a campfire for several nights, then brushing hair only with fingers that had handled meat and ash. What feels unpleasant now may have been ordinary maintenance, picking out what could be seen and leaving the rest until it became painful. Hair could stay dry for days while still collecting smoke, fat, crumbs, and dirt from every task around the body. Fingers could remove the largest pieces, but the scalp beneath could remain oily, itchy, and hidden. Once that itching began to move and bite, the problem would no longer be only dirty hair. Deep in thick hair, the dirtiest problem was not always smoke or grease. It could be movement. A tiny tick, louse, flea, or biting insect could hide close to the scalp where fingers could barely reach. Neanderthal women may have felt it first as a small crawl, then a sharper itch, then a spot that demanded scratching again and again. Hair that kept the head warm also gave small creatures shelter. The conditions around their bodies made that shelter easy to create. Hair held oil from the scalp, smoke and ash mixed with that oil. Animal skins around the shoulders, neck, and bedding kept warmth close through the night. Warmth helped people survive, but it also made a comfortable place for insects that liked skin, hair, sweat, and old fibers. The scalp became a hidden surface beneath everything. Without a fine comb, cleaning hair was partly searching by touch. Neanderthal women could use fingers to divide strands, feel along the roots, and press the nails against the skin. A nail might catch a small insect. It might also find a dried piece of blood, dirt, or skin. Every search had to be slow because the thing being hunted could be smaller than a seed and darker than the hair around it. The places easiest to feel were not always the places most affected. The front of the hair could be reached. The sides could be scratched. But behind the ears, along the nape, and high at the back of the head, sight was nearly useless. Fingers could travel there, but they could not see what they found. Neanderthal women had to trust the feeling of a bump, a moving dot, or a tiny hard speck under the nail. This made help important. Another woman could sit behind and separate the hair in sections. One hand could hold the strands apart while the other searched near the scalp. The work required patience. A small insect could move deeper when the hair opened. A speck could look like ash, then turn out to be something attached to skin or hair. Cleaning became inspection, not washing. The act was intimate but practical. Hair could be lifted away from the neck. Fingers could press behind the ear. Nails could scrape gently along the scalp. Larger bits could be pinched and pulled out. If something clung too tightly, it might have to be dragged free, bringing a sting with it. The woman being checked had to sit still, while another pair of dirty hands worked through the hair. Those hands were not clean tools. They may have touched meat, ash, hides, soil, children, and their own skin earlier in the day, yet they were still the best tools available. A fingernail could separate what water could not remove. A thumb could crush a small insect. Fingers could feel what the eye missed. The same hands that carried dirt could also remove living dirt from the scalp. The scalp could suffer from the search. Scratching too often could break the skin. Picking at one itchy place could open a small red mark. If blood dried into the hair, the strands could stick together and hide the sore area more completely. Then the next round of searching would hurt more. A problem that began with a bite could become a small wound under warm, dirty hair. Neanderthal women may have known certain areas needed more attention. Behind the ears stayed warm. The nape of the neck touched hair, skin, sweat, and animal coverings. The crown could hold thick layers of hair that trapped heat. These places were hard to inspect alone. They were also exactly where insects could remain longest. The body could announce the problem with itching, but it could not reveal the source easily. A dirty scalp was not only uncomfortable, it could affect sleep, work, and mood. An itch that returned every few moments could disturb rest. A bite near the hairline could swell. Scratching during the night could leave blackened fingernails and tiny cuts. Women waking already tired might still have to sit for inspection before the day became too busy. The head could become one more task among fire, food, children, and hides. The search might not remove everything. One insect could be missed. Eggs or tiny attachments could remain close to the hair shaft. A place that looked clear in weak light could begin itching again later. Hair was dense, oily, smoky, and often tangled. Even careful fingers could not turn it into a clean surface. They could only reduce the problem enough for the body to rest. Some sections may have been cut away if they became too tangled, sticky, or infested. Cutting was rough, but it solved problems that fingers could not. A clump near the neck that held grease, dirt, and insects might be more trouble than it was worth. Removing it could leave uneven hair, but uneven hair was easier to live with than constant biting. Comfort mattered more than appearance. Inside the group, this kind of grooming could become routine. Women could check children, older relatives, injured people, and one another. The body areas hardest to see required shared attention. That did not make the work clean, it made it necessary. Close living meant close inspection. A scalp was not private when something was crawling across it. The most unsettling detail is how normal the whole scene may have been. Smoke in the hair, insects near the scalp, dirty nails searching through tangled strands, and another woman leaning close enough to see each tiny movement. There was care in it, but the care was rough. There was hygiene in it, but not the kind that feels clean. The inspection could also create a small pause in the day. Bodies stayed close, hands moved carefully, and the discomfort of one woman became work shared by another for survival. The plain irony was that keeping hair warm and covered also made it a better hiding place for things that bit. A modern person might compare it to checking campfire-soaked hair for lice with bare fingernails instead of a comb. What stays in the mind is not only the insects, but the patience required to search a scalp that could never be fully clean. For Neanderthal women, cleaning hair could mean hunting for whatever moved beneath it, one small section at a time. Fingers could find some of it, but nails could also leave scratches beneath the same tangled hair. When one tiny itch was scratched too many times, the skin under the hair could begin to bleed. A small itch under the hair could begin as almost nothing. For Neanderthal women, It might feel like one brief prick near the scalp, then a second one in the same place. A hand would rise without much thought. Fingernails would push through smoky hair, find the spot, and scratch until the sharp feeling eased. For a moment, that could feel like relief. The trouble was what those fingernails had already touched. Hands moved through soil, ash, animal fat, meat, hides, children, and bedding during the day. Even after a quick rinse, dirt could remain under the nails and along the cracked edges of the skin. When those nails dug into the scalp, they did not touch clean flesh. They brought the rest of the day with them. The scalp was easy to injure because the itch could return again and again. A bite from a small insect, a clump of dried sweat, or a patch of irritated skin could demand attention. One scratch might not break the skin. 10 scratches in the same place could. Neanderthal women may have rubbed harder when the itch refused to stop, pressing nails deeper through hair that already held grease and ash. Once the skin opened, the wound was hidden almost immediately. Hair could fall back over the sore place, smoke darkened the roots. Grease made strands stick together. A little blood could dry near the scalp and glue hair into a small clump. From the outside it might look like ordinary tangled hair. Beneath it the skin could be red, torn, and beginning to swell. This made scalp wounds different from cuts on the hand or arm. A cut on the wrist could be seen. A scrape on the knee could be rinsed. A sore place high on the head or near the back of the neck was harder to find alone. Neanderthal women could feel heat, pain, or wetness there, but fingers could only guess at the damage. The eyes could not check it directly. Scratching also mixed fresh blood with old dirt. A nail carrying soil or animal fat could tear the skin. Blood could rise into hair that already held soot and sweat. Then the same fingers might scratch again, pushing more material into the sore place. The body tried to seal the cut, while daily life kept reopening it. A tiny wound could become a place where dirt returned again and again. Cold water was not always enough to help. Pressing water onto the scalp could sting sharply. It could loosen dried blood, but it could also leave the hair wet and cold. If the injured place sat under thick hair, water might not reach it well. Neanderthal women could soak the surface and still leave the sore patch dirty beneath the strands. Rubbing the scalp clean could make the injury worse. Moss might be soft against the hand, but it could drag across broken skin. Grass could remove dried blood, but the tips could scratch. A strip of hide could wipe away wetness, yet its surface might carry old smoke, grease, or body dirt. Every attempt to clean the wound could also place something new inside it. Another woman might have to inspect the area. Hair would need to be parted slowly. Sticky strands could pull at dried blood. Fingers could search for swelling, heat, or wetness. If a clump had formed, it might have to be softened, picked apart, or cut away. This was not gentle grooming for appearance. It was close work done because a hidden wound could not be ignored forever. The smell could change when the wound worsened. At first it might smell like scalp oil, smoke, and old sweat. Later, if the skin became infected, the area could grow warm and sour. A small amount of fluid might dry into the hair. The woman with the wound might notice pain when lying down, or a burning feeling when hair moved across the spot. Others might notice the smell before they saw the injury. In a Neanderthal group, this kind of problem would not pause daily work. Women still had to carry, gather, prepare food, tend children, and stay near the fire. A sore scalp could throb while hands worked meat or lifted skins. Hair could pull against the wound each time the head turned. Smoke could sit over the sore place all day. Dirt did not wait for healing. When sleep came, the pressure of a hide under the head could press dirt into the sore area again. Turning during the night might pull at stuck hair, crack the dried blood, and wake the itch. By morning, the same wound could feel both older and freshly opened again under dirty hair. The danger was not dramatic at first. It began with a common itch, a dirty nail, and a few hard scratches. That is what makes it uncomfortable to imagine. Nothing had to go terribly wrong in a single moment. The wound could grow slowly, hidden under hair, while everyone treated it as another ordinary irritation of life, close to smoke, insects, and hides. Pain might be the only warning. A hot spot under the hair, a pulsing ache, or a wet feeling near the roots could tell Neanderthal women that the skin had changed. But without mirrors, clear light, or clean tools, knowing the problem and treating it were not the same thing. The injured person might depend on another woman to look, touch, and decide what could be removed. Even help carried risk. The inspecting hands might not be clean. Nails used to lift hair could carry ash or food grease. Pulling dried strands apart could reopen the cut. Cutting away a clump could nick the skin again. The same act that exposed the wound could make it bleed. Care and harm were often separated only by pressure, patience, and luck. The ugly irony was that a scratch meant to stop one small itch could open the scalp to everything trapped under the fingernail. A modern person might think of scratching a bug bite with hands that had touched raw meat, fireplace ash, and damp ground all day. The unsettling detail is how easily a wound could hide in plain sight, covered by hair that looked merely dirty. A small itch on the scalp could become blood, swelling, and dried hair stuck close to the skin. Neanderthal women could feel the damage before anyone could see it clearly. And once the body stayed wrapped in warm animal skins, sweat would begin creating trouble in places even harder to air out. Cold weather did not mean dry skin. For Neanderthal women, a cold morning could still become hot under animal skins, especially after walking, carrying, bending, and sitting near the fire. The air outside might sting the face and hands, but under the coverings the body could warm quickly. Heat stayed trapped against the skin. Sweat could gather even while the world around them felt frozen. Animal skins protected the body, but they also pressed it closed. Around the shoulders, chest, waist, hips, and thighs, the coverings could hold warmth in place for many hours. That warmth helped Neanderthal women survive, yet it also stopped the skin from airing out. Once sweat appeared, it could stay damp longer than expected. When the body cooled again, that moisture could dry into a sticky layer. The armpits were among the first places to suffer. Arms moved while carrying wood, lifting children, scraping hides, and pulling heavy things across the ground. Under the arms, skin rubbed against skin, sweat mixed with body oil and soot from the air. If the area stayed covered beneath hide or fur, it could become sour, itchy, and tender by the end of the day. Under the breasts, heat could collect similarly. Neanderthal women moving through daily work would bend, lift, crouch, and sit close to the fire. The skin there could stay warm and damp, pressed between the weight of the breast and the body beneath it. Ash from smoky air could cling to any moisture. When the sweat dried, a thin residue of salt, oil, and dirt could remain in the fold. The groin and inner thighs could be even more uncomfortable. Walking long distances made those areas rub. Animal skins around the hips could trap heat, urine smell, sweat, and old body odor. A small amount of dampness could spread and then dry again. Each step could grind the residue against sensitive skin. What began as ordinary sweat could turn into redness and pain. The waist carried its own band of grime. If a hide was wrapped or tied around the body, pressure could hold sweat in one long line. Dirt from hands could touch the same place when the covering was adjusted. Smoke could settle on the outside, while damp body heat gathered underneath. By night, the skin around the waist might feel rough, marked, and irritated. The problem was not only moisture. Sweat mixed with what already lived on the body. Smoke particles, ash, dried skin, animal fat, plant dust, and old grease from hands could all join the damp areas. Together, they could form a residue that did not disappear when the sweat dried. It could become a thin crust in the folds, especially where the body bent or pressed against itself. If Neanderthal women wiped these places, they had to do it carefully. A little cold water could reduce the sticky feeling, but too much water could chill the body. Damp moss could hold moisture against the skin, but it might also leave small plant pieces behind. A piece of soft hide could wipe away sweat, but it might already smell of smoke and old grease. Cleaning one layer could add another. Leaving the sweat alone was not pleasant either. Skin that stayed damp under coverings could soften. Once softened, it could tear more easily from rubbing. The armpits could sting when the arms moved. The area under the breasts could burn when skin shifted. The inner thighs could become sore with each step. Neanderthal women did not need a visible wound to feel the damage building. The cold made the choice more complicated. Removing animal skins to let the body air out could bring sharp discomfort. A woman might loosen a covering near the fire, wipe one area, then cover again before the skin grew too cold. Full exposure was risky in harsh weather, so the body stayed trapped between two problems: heat and moisture underneath, cold and shivering outside. Movement kept renewing the sweat. Carrying a heavy piece of wood could warm the arms and back. Walking uphill could heat the thighs and groin. Sitting close to flames could make the chest and face flush. Then stepping away from the fire could chill the damp skin quickly. Neanderthal women could pass through hot and cold many times in one day, and the skin had to absorb each change. The smell would collect in those covered places. Smoke might hide it from a distance, but under the skin it could grow stronger. When a covering shifted, trapped odour could rise from the armpits, waist, groin, or damp folds. Inside a close group, everyone likely carried some version of that scent. It may not have caused surprise, but the body would still feel the itch and soreness underneath. The most painful places were also the least easy to keep dry. Air could reach the hands and face. It could reach the front of the legs when coverings moved. But under the breasts, between the thighs and around the groin, the body created its own warm pockets. These areas needed cleaning most, yet exposing them to cold air or cold water could feel harsh. Modesty, closeness, and constant work added to the difficulty. Rubbing could become a habit. Neanderthal women might press a hand under the arm, adjust a hide at the waist, or shift the legs to ease burning skin. Each small action could move dirt and sweat around rather than remove it. Fingernails could scratch through the residue. If the skin was already raw, that scratch could open a small break. Even rest did not solve it. Lying close to others beneath heavy coverings could keep damp areas warm for hours, so skin that needed air instead spent the night pressed into smoke, hide, and more shared body heat. The unpleasant irony was that the skins meant to protect Neanderthal women from cold could make their warmest body folds the dirtiest places. In modern terms, it would feel like wearing the same damp outdoor layers all day, sweating under them, then sleeping in them again beside smoke. What stands out here is how ordinary soreness could become, not from one injury, but from skin rubbing against its own trapped sweat. Sweat could build under animal skins, even when the air outside was cold enough to hurt the hands. Neanderthal women could wipe the worst places, but the body kept making heat, moisture, and friction with every movement. The most private areas stayed warmest and dampest, and keeping those places clean would create a new struggle of its own. The most private areas of the body were probably the hardest for Neanderthal women to keep dry. Warmth gathered there because animal skins wrapped around the hips and thighs. Air could not move easily through those covered places. Sweat, urine, body fluids, and old smell could stay close to the skin for hours. What protected the lower body from cold also trapped everything the body released. There was no soft underwear to catch moisture and then be changed. There was no clean cloth folded away for later. Animal skin, fur, grass, or plant fibre could sit near the hips, but those materials were not the same as washable linen. Once they became damp, they could hold smell and rub against the body again. The skin beneath had to live with that contact. Neanderthal women walked, crouched, sat, carried, bent, and slept with coverings pressed around the waist and groin. Even in cold weather, movement created heat between the thighs. A short walk over uneven ground could make the inner legs sweat. Sitting near the fire could warm the whole lower body. Then cold air outside the shelter could make the dampness feel sharp. The same area could move from warm to chilled many times in one day. Urine could add to the discomfort. Without separate undergarments, a small amount of moisture could remain on the skin after relieving the body. A quick wipe with grass, moss, leaves, water, or a bit of old hide might remove the wettest feeling, but not every trace. Around the groin and inner thighs scent could remain. When skin was wrapped back into place, the old smell could become trapped again. Other body fluids made the area harder to manage. Sweat alone could irritate. Mixed with urine, menstrual blood, or vaginal discharge, it could become stickier and stronger. Neanderthal women may not have named these problems in modern terms, but the body would have made them clear. Itching, dampness, burning, and soreness were direct messages. The private areas could demand attention while still being difficult to reach and clean. Wiping too little created one problem. Moist skin could stay warm under coverings. Warmth and dampness could soften the surface. As women walked, the skin could rub against itself until it became red. A place that was merely sweaty in the morning could become painful by evening. Each step could press old moisture and dirt deeper into the irritated fold. Wiping too much created another problem. Grass could be soft at first touch, but dry edges could scrape. Moss could hold water, but small pieces could cling to the skin. A piece of animal hide could feel smoother, yet it might carry old fat, smoke, and grit. When Neanderthal women rubbed hard to remove smell or stickiness, the skin could sting. A stronger wipe could leave tiny scratches in one of the most sensitive places on the body. Cold water did not solve everything. A little water could ease burning skin for a moment. Too much could chill the groin, thighs, and belly quickly. Wet skin under animal coverings could stay damp after the washing ended. If the body had to return to work at once, the moisture might remain trapped and cause more rubbing. Cleaning could leave the area wetter than before. Privacy made the task even more limited. Neanderthal groups lived close together with shared fire, shared sleeping space, and constant movement around one another. A full, careful cleaning of the groin or inner thighs could not always happen openly. Women may have wiped quickly under coverings, turned away, crouched near water, or waited until others were busy. The body needed care, but the group setting did not always give time or space for it. The smell could be familiar without being harmless. In a close group, everyone carried smoke, sweat, and animal odor. A strong scent from the groin may not have shocked people in the way it would now. Still, Neanderthal women would feel the physical cost. Smell was one thing, raw skin was another. A body can accept odor longer than it can accept burning with every step. The area around the waist could add pressure. If a skin covering was tied, tucked, or held tightly at the hips, it could create a line where sweat gathered. Dirt from hands could be transferred there each time the covering was adjusted. The band around the body might become damp, then dry, then damp again. Under it, skin could grow rough and tender. The inner thighs could suffer from distance walked. Neanderthal women did not move across smooth floors. They crossed stones, roots, mud, snow, slopes, and hard ground. Each step brought the thighs together, especially when coverings shifted or bunched. A rough edge of hide could rub the same place again and again. By the time the body rested, the skin might be hot, sore, and darkened with sweat and dirt. The hardest part was the lack of a clean replacement layer. If one piece of hide or soft material became damp, there might not be another dry one ready. Even if the wet piece was removed, the body still needed warmth. A woman could not simply stay uncovered in cold air while everything dried. So the same material might return to the same skin, carrying yesterday into today. Small scratches in these areas could become serious because they were rarely left alone. Every walk rubbed them, every covering touched them, every bit of sweat found them. A scratch between the thighs or near the groin could reopen before it closed. Dirt and body fluids could settle there. Pain could grow from a mark so small that it would not be noticed until movement made it burn. Even sitting still could press the soreness into the same trapped skin again slowly. The rough irony was that the places Neanderthal women most needed to keep dry were the places animal skins kept warmest and wettest. A modern comparison would be wearing damp outdoor clothing against bare skin all day, then trying to clean the sore spots with grass and cold water. The troubling point is not only the dirt, but the way the body had to choose between irritation and injury. The most private areas of Neanderthal women could hold heat, moisture, smell, and soreness longer than almost anywhere else. Too little wiping left the skin damp and itchy, while too much rubbing could cut it open. The material meant to protect the body would bring another problem, because every covering began as animal skin that had once been blood, fat, and flesh. Before any animal skin could warm a body, it had to be taken from an animal that had only recently died. For women in a Neanderthal group, a covering was not born clean. It began as a heavy, wet hide with blood along one side, fat clinging beneath the surface, and pieces of tissue still stuck where the skin had been pulled away from flesh. That hide could keep cold air away from the shoulders, hips, and legs, but in its first state it was closer to meat than clothing. The inside could feel slick, the edges could be ragged, a warm smell could rise from it, especially near the fire. If the animal had been opened nearby, the same hands that touched meat could then pull at the skin that might later touch the body. Neanderthal women may have helped turn that raw hide into something usable. The work was physical. A hide could be spread over the ground, stretched across a log, held against stone, or pulled tight by several hands. The inner surface had to be scraped. Fat, blood, membranes, and small pieces of flesh had to come away before they spoiled. If they stayed, The hide would continue smelling like a dead animal. Scraping was not clean work. Stone flakes or dull edges could drag across the inner surface, lifting greasy strips and wet clumps. Each stroke could spread fat over the hands. Blood could dry on the fingers while new wet tissue stuck to the palms. The wrists could darken, the nails could fill. The tools used to clean the hide could become coated with the same material they were meant to remove. The smell would have been strong. Fresh blood, wet skin, animal fat, and loosened tissue do not smell like finished clothing. They smell close, heavy, and bodily. Smoke from the fire could cover some of it, but heat could also make the odor rise. Neanderthal women working over a hide might carry that smell on the fingers, arms, chest, and hair long after the scraping stopped. The body had to come close to the mess. A hide was not a light cloth that could be handled at arm length. It could be heavy, damp, and difficult to control. Women might lean over it, press knees near it, brace it with feet, or pull it tight against the ground. Fat could touch the legs. Blood could mark the forearms. Small scraps could stick to skin already stained with ash and sweat. There was also pressure to work quickly. Fresh hide could rot if neglected. Warm weather made the danger worse, but even cold did not stop decay forever. The parts left behind on the inside would begin to smell stronger. Flies or small insects could be drawn to it. A piece meant for warmth could become difficult to use if it was not scraped and dried in time. Neanderthal women had to judge how much cleaning was enough. Scrape too little and tissue remained. Scrape too hard and the hide could tear or become thin in places. A hole meant less protection from cold. A thick patch left dirty meant more odour against the body. Every stroke across the hide was a choice between saving the material and removing what would rot. Their hands paid for that choice. Grease could make stone tools slip. A rough edge could catch a finger. A small cut could mix with animal blood before anyone noticed. Water could rinse away red colour, but fat stay on the skin. When women rubbed their hands on grass, moss or hide, the surface might look cleaner while the smell remained around the nails. The tools had to be handled again later. A scraper used on wet hide might be set down near food, bedding or firewood. If it was picked up again, dried fat could flake onto the fingers. Bits of old tissue could harden along the edge. A tool that looked like a stone could still carry the memory of the carcass in its smell and surface. The finished covering was never fully separate from that beginning. Drying, scraping, smoking, and softening could make the hide more useful. It could become flexible enough to wrap around the shoulders or hips. It could protect the body from wind and cold. Yet if the inner surface had not been cleaned well, the old animal smell could remain. When warmed by body heat, it could return quietly. This meant the thing protecting Neanderthal women could also press old death against living skin. A hide tied at the waist might carry traces of fat where the body sweated. A skin over the shoulders might release a sour smell when heated near the fire. A sleeping cover might feel warm while still holding the scent of flesh that had not been fully removed. Wearing such a skin could affect the body beneath it. Greasy patches could rub against the neck, breasts, waist and thighs. Small hardened bits on the inner surface could scratch. If moisture from sweat softened them, the smell could grow stronger. Women could turn the hide, shake it, scrape it again, or hold it near smoke, but the material was never like clean, woven cloth. The cleaning of hides also connected animal dirt to human care. Hands that scraped fat might later wipe a child. Fingers that pulled tissue from skin might later touch food. Arms marked with blood could lift a covering around the body. There was no separate workshop far away from daily life. The mess of the animal entered the same hands, the same fire, and the same shelter used for living. Even after drying, the hide could remind the skin beneath it that warmth had come from slow work done over old blood, fat, and decay. The grim irony was that the skin meant to keep Neanderthal women alive first had to be cleaned like a piece of a dead body. A modern comparison would be making a coat from a fresh animal hide with bare hands, then wearing it before the smell had fully left. It is hard not to notice how warmth and filth could arrive from the same material. The animal skin around Neanderthal women began with blood, fat, and tissue that had to be scraped away by hand. If the inside was cleaned poorly, the covering could keep its old odour and press that odour back against warm human skin. When the thickest areas stayed damp, the skin could continue changing even after it had already been wrapped around a living body. A poorly worked hide could stay dangerous after it looked ready to wear. For women in a Neanderthal group, the outside of an animal skin might feel dry under the hand, while thick inner places still held moisture. The edges could seem stiff, the surface could look usable, but in folds and places where fat had not been scraped away, damp matter could remain hidden. That hidden dampness mattered because body heat changed it. When Neanderthal women wrapped such a skin around the shoulders, hips, chest, or thighs, warmth moved into the material. What had smelled faint outside the body could smell stronger once pressed against living skin. Old fat could soften, bits of tissue left in thicker areas could begin to rot more clearly. The covering could protect the body and sour against it at the same time. A hide did not need to be dripping wet to cause trouble. A small greasy patch near the inner surface could keep a heavy smell. A thick section near the neck or waist could hold dampness deeper than the fingers could feel. Smoke might dry and darken the outside while the inside stayed soft. Neanderthal women may have noticed the problem first through smell. A skin warmed by the body could release a sour animal odor. It could rise from the waist when the covering shifted. It could gather near the chest when the hide was pulled close. It could cling to hair and hands when women adjusted it. It would be the duller smell of fat, damp tissue and slow decay. The body beneath that skin would feel it too. Damp inner patches could press against sweat. Greasy places could stick to the neck, breasts, belly and thighs. A hard bit left from scraping could rub one spot again and again. If the skin was worn during walking, crouching, carrying or sleeping, the bad patch could stay in contact for hours. Warm human skin made the remaining animal matter more active. Small creatures could be drawn to those places. Flies, mites, fleas and other insects could find cracks, seams, greasy spots and damp folds. A hide used for sleeping or wearing gave them warmth and shelter. Neanderthal women might feel crawling, biting, or sudden itching under a covering that had seemed only dirty before. Removing the hide was not always easy. In cold weather, the body needed that layer. Taking it off meant letting air strike bare or partly covered skin. If the fire was low or the wind was sharp, the choice became cruel. Keep wearing the sour hide and stay warm, or remove it and shiver while scraping, drying, or smoking it again. Cleanliness demanded exposure. Women could loosen the covering for a moment to let air reach the skin, but that did not fix the hide. The damp area remained, the smell stayed inside. So the same skin might be wrapped back into place because warmth was more urgent than comfort. Trying to treat the hide again took work. It might need to be scraped with stone, rubbed with dry grass, stretched near heat or held in smoke. Scraping could thin the material or tear it. Fire could make it too stiff if held too close. Smoke could dry the surface while missing the thickest damp spots. Drying one area could leave another heavy and sour. The hands used for that work became dirty again. Neanderthal women handling a half-rotting hide could smear fat across the fingers and wrists. Small clumps could stick beneath the nails. A place that smelled bad on the covering could move to the skin of the person trying to fix it. The effort to make the hide safer could spread the same smell onto hands, hair and other skins nearby. If the weather was wet, the problem could return even after careful work. Rain, snow, damp ground and body sweat could reawaken old odours. A hide that had finally dried could become heavy again. Areas that had seemed scraped clean could release smell when warmed. Their coverings lived in the same damp world as their bodies. Sleeping with such a hide made the discomfort closer. At night, the body pressed into it for warmth all through the night. The sour inner surface could touch the neck, back, waist, or thighs for hours. Sweat from sleep could mix with the damp animal matter. By morning, the body could smell more like the hide, and the hide could smell more like the body. The skin under the covering could become irritated. A damp patch resting against the same place could soften the skin there. If insects had gathered in the folds, bites could appear. If a rough inner edge rubbed during walking, a red sore could grow. Neanderthal women might rub the spot with a hand, only to find the hand then smelled of the hide. The problem could spread from object to body and back again. The worst detail was that the hide was still valuable. It had taken effort to remove, scrape, dry, soften and keep. Throwing it away meant losing warmth. In a cold place, that loss mattered. Even a sour, badly prepared skin might be better than no covering at all. So, Neanderthal women may have kept wearing pieces that modern people would reject immediately. Disgust had to make room for survival. There may have been no clear moment when a hide became too dirty to use. It could begin as only a little smell, then a damp patch, then itching, then a stronger odour near the fire, then small insects in the folds. Each change could seem tolerable until the body had already spent days against it. The bitter irony was that a hide could still be dying slowly while it was being used to keep Neanderthal women alive. A modern comparison would be wearing a damp leather coat that had not been fully cleaned, then relying on it for warmth every night. What feels hardest to ignore is that removing the rotten layer could mean giving up the only layer keeping cold away. A poorly treated hide could warm Neanderthal women, while old fat, damp tissue and hidden insects stayed close to their skin. Taking it off might help the smell, but it also left the body exposed to cold air that could be more dangerous than disgust. When the covering could not truly be washed, the only answer was often to make it less filthy and keep wearing it. A covering made from animal skin could keep cold away, but it could not be cleaned the way cloth is cleaned. For women in a Neanderthal group, wearing skin meant living with a material that absorbed the body slowly. It held warmth, but it also held sweat, hair oil, smoke, blood, grease, and the smell of many days pressed against living skin. Water was not always a friend to leather. If a hide was soaked too long, it could become heavy, stretched, stiff, or misshapen when it dried. A piece that had once wrapped around the shoulders could dry into a harder shape. A strip used near the waist could shrink or turn rough. Washing too much could damage the very thing needed for warmth, so cleaning skin clothing had to be limited. Neanderthal women could shake it hard to remove dry dust, grass, crumbs, and loose ash. They could scrape the inside with a stone edge to lift old grease or dried dirt. They could hold it near the fire and let heat pull moisture out. They could hang it in smoke, hoping the smell of the fire would cover the smell of the body. But the inner surface would still remember contact. Sweat from the armpits could sink into the parts near the shoulders. Oil from hair could darken the areas near the neck. Blood from meatwork, menstruation, birth, wounds, or animal handling could leave marks that did not vanish with a quick rub. A hide used against the body did not return to its first state. It only became less bad for a while. The smell was one of the hardest things to remove. Body odour could settle deep into the softened side of the skin. Smoke could cover it, but smoke did not erase it. Heat near the fire could bring old scents back out. When Neanderthal women pulled a warmed covering over the chest, hips, or thighs, the smell of old sweat could rise again under the new smoke. Their bodies made the clothing dirty every time it protected them. Walking made sweat gather under the hide. Sitting near fire warmed the skin and opened the smell. Sleeping pressed oil, saliva, and body fluids into the same surface. Carrying children transferred dampness and dirt from small bodies. A covering did its job by staying close, and that closeness made it filthy. There was no simple pile of clean replacements. If one skin smelled bad, it could not always be thrown aside. Preparing another took time, labour, tools, and an animal. The group might need every usable hide for warmth, sleeping, carrying, or shielding the body from wind. Neanderthal women may have worn the same piece again because the choice was not between dirty clothing and clean clothing. It was between dirty clothing and being cold. The inner side of the hide could become darker in the places that touched skin most often. Around the neck it could collect hair oil and sweat. Under the arms it could hold sour dampness. Near the waist and groin it could keep older body smell. Along the legs it could gather soil and dried mud. Each area carried a different record of how the body moved. Cleaning by shaking helped only with loose dirt. A hard shake could send dry ash, plant bits, and grit into the air. It could make the covering feel lighter. It could remove insects that were not buried deep in folds. But shaking did not touch the grease inside. It did not pull old sweat from the surface. It could make a hide look better without making it truly clean. Scraping reached deeper, but it had limits. A stone edge could remove dried mud, fat, or crusted spots. It could also thin the hide. Too much scraping could make the material weaker, rougher, or easier to tear. A worn place near the shoulder or hip could become less protective. Neanderthal women had to clean enough to use it, but not so much that the covering was ruined. Drying near fire could be useful and unpleasant at the same time. Heat could remove dampness after rain, sweat, or contact with wet ground, yet fire could make trapped body smell rise. A hide that seemed tolerable when cold could smell stronger as it warmed. Smoke could add another layer over everything, creating the familiar mixture of hot skin, old sweat, animal fat, and ash. The body beneath the covering could feel that mixture. A stiff patch could scrape the neck. A greasy patch could stick under the arm. A smoky edge could rub the cheek while sleeping. If the hide had hardened after drying, it could press into the waist or thighs. Neanderthal women were not only wearing dirt, they were wearing a surface that changed against their skin every day. A badly cleaned piece could also affect healing skin. If a scratch, bite, or sore spot touched old sweat and grease on the inside of a hide, the irritation could return. A scab could soften under damp covering. A raw place could sting when rubbed by stiff leather. The clothing meant to protect the body could keep wounds warm, hidden, and dirty. Some coverings may have been turned inside out, shifted to another part of the body, or shared when needed. That could move the dirty surface from one area of skin to another. A section that had rubbed a sweaty waist might later lie near the shoulder. A piece used during sleep might become a daytime wrap. Each reuse carried old contact into new places. For Neanderthal women, clothing was not separate from bedding, work, carrying, and warmth. One hide could pass through all of those uses before anyone had a chance to make it less foul. The plain irony was that Neanderthal women could make skin clothing look cleaner by shaking and smoking it, while the deepest smells stayed inside. A modern comparison would be wearing the same leather jacket against bare sweaty skin for many days, then calling it clean after scraping it and warming it by smoke. The hard thing to accept is that less dirty often had to be good enough, because fully clean could destroy the only covering they had. Leather clothing could not be washed into freshness, only shaken, scraped, dried, and worn again. Neanderthal women carried old sweat, smoke, hair oil, and body odour in the same material that kept them alive. When those skins were placed on the sleeping ground, they became more than clothing, and the dirt of many bodies began to gather underneath. By night, even a body that had been wiped clean could return to dirt. For women in a Neanderthal group, the sleeping place was not a fresh bed after the day. It was grass, leaves, skins, and warmth laid over cold ground. It protected the body from stone and earth, but also held what bodies released during sleep. The ground itself was hard and cold. Lying directly on it could chill the hips, back, shoulders, and legs. Grass softened the surface. Animal skins kept warmth close. These materials mattered because sleep was not separate from survival. Neanderthal women needed a place where tired muscles could rest without losing heat. But every night added something to that place. Sweat left the skin and entered the grass beneath the body. Hair oil rubbed into the hide under the head. Saliva could dampen the edge of the skin near the mouth. Fluids could soak through the upper layer into the plants below. A place that helped the body rest also stored the body. The smell would build slowly. One night might leave a faint scent of sweat and smoke. Many nights could make the sleeping place sourer and heavier. Neanderthal women lying down after a long day would press the back, thighs, hair, and arms against material already marked by sleep. Even after wiping the face, hands, armpits, or groin, the body returned to old contact. The head made its own stains. Hair that had collected smoke, ash, grease, and small food pieces during the day could rub against the hide or grass beneath it. Scalp oil could darken a sleeping skin over time. Loose hairs could remain in the bedding. If the scalp had a small wound, dried blood could touch the surface. Another resting body might later touch what one head had left. Mouths also left traces. During sleep, saliva could run from the lips, especially when bodies were exhausted or close to warmth. It could dry into the edge of a hide or soak into leaves. A child sleeping beside women could drool into the same bedding. In dim light, the mark might be invisible, but the surface was not clean. Food could reach the sleeping place as well. Neanderthal women might eat near the fire, feed children, or handle meat before rest. Crumbs, marrow grease, plant fibers, and tiny bones could fall into the bedding. Grass could hide them. Once food slipped between layers, it could remain in the dark until crushed by a hip, shoulder, or foot. The body could notice the dirt before the eyes did. A damp patch under the thigh could feel cold. A greasy place under the shoulder could stick. A sharp fragment of plant, bone, or grit could press into the skin. Old smell could rise when a hide warmed beneath the body. Neanderthal women may have shifted positions, trying to find the least wet and least sour place to rest. Shared sleeping made the problem larger. Warmth often meant closeness. Women, children, older people, and injured group members could lie near one another. One body could leave sweat. Another could leave saliva. A child could wet the bedding. Someone with a wound could leave blood or fluid. The place did not belong to one body. It carried the night of several bodies together. This did not make it useless. It made it necessary and dirty at the same time. Grass, leaves, and skins saved heat, softened the ground, and allowed rest. They also absorbed the smell of skin, hair, smoke, and fluids. Neanderthal women could not reject them because they were unpleasant. The alternative was cold ground, sore bones, and less sleep. Cleaning before lying down could therefore feel almost unfair. A woman could wipe sweat from under the arms, rub the hands with water, clear ash from the face, and clean between the thighs. Then the body would settle onto a hide that held other nights of sweat and smoke. Freshly wiped skin could pick up old dirt at first contact. Cleaning did not end with clean surroundings. The warmth of sleep could reactivate old smells. As bodies rested under skins, heat moved into the bedding. Damp places softened, sweat from earlier nights could mix with fresh sweat, hair oil could warm, a smell that seemed dull in cold air could rise again under a living body. They might fall asleep inside the same odours they had tried to remove. Insects could also find the bedding useful. Warm grass, crumbs, flakes, and damp hides could give small creatures places to hide. A woman lying down might feel a bite on the hip or neck. A child might scratch during sleep. The source could be difficult to find because bedding had folds and dark spaces. Cleaning the body alone could not remove what waited beneath it. The problem followed the body into morning. Skin pressed against dirty bedding could wake with new marks. Hair could be more tangled. The back could smell of hide and smoke. A sore place on the thigh could feel worse after hours against damp grass. Neanderthal women might rise from sleep warmer, stiffer, and newly coated with the bedding itself. There may have been attempts to improve it. Grass could be pulled out, leaves could be replaced, a hide could be shaken, a damp layer could be moved near the fire or spread in sunlight. But such work took time and dry material. If the weather was wet, the same bedding might be used again. Less dirty was often all that could be achieved. Rest did not protect the body from dirt. It pressed the body deeper into it. For Neanderthal women, sleep meant warmth, but warmth needed absorbent layers. Those layers held sweat, saliva, oil crumbs, and old fluids. The cleanest moment could vanish as soon as the body lay down. The plain irony was that the bedding meant to keep Neanderthal women off the dirty ground could become its own dirty ground over time. A modern comparison would be washing your body lightly, then sleeping on the same smoky blanket and damp grass used by several people for many nights. What feels most uncomfortable is how fast clean skin could lose that small victory when it touched the bed. The sleeping place could protect Neanderthal women from cold while holding the sweat, hair oil, saliva, crumbs, and fluids of earlier nights. Even careful wiping could not keep the body clean when the surface carried old contact. By morning, the need to shake hides, pull away damp grass, and rebuild the bed would become another dirty task. Cleaning the sleeping place could sound like a simple task, but for women in a Neanderthal group, it may have meant touching the dirtiest layers left by tired bodies. After a night of warmth, sweat, saliva, hair oil crumbs, and smoke, the grass beneath the skins could feel damp and heavy. The body might have risen from that place already marked by it, and the hands that began cleaning it would become dirty before the morning was fully awake. The first job was probably to find the worst layer. Grass, leaves, moss, or soft plants placed beneath the body could protect the hips, shoulders, and legs from cold ground. After many hours, those same plants could hold moisture from sleeping skin. Some pieces might be dry on top and wet below. Women could pull them apart by hand, feel which parts were sour or flattened, and drag the worst pieces away from the sleeping area. That work would not feel clean. Damp grass could stick to the fingers. Old sweat could leave a faint slickness. Food crumbs hidden in the bedding could fall across the hands. Small insects disturbed from the warmth could move quickly through the loosened plants. Neanderthal women might have shaken the clumps, lifted them outside, or pushed them away from the main resting place. The goal was not to make a clean bed. The goal was to remove what had become too wet, too smelly, or too full of small living things. Replacing the bedding depended on what could be found nearby. Dry grass or leaves had to be gathered, carried, and spread by hand. If the ground outside was wet, fresh material might not be much better than the old material. In cold seasons, dry plants could be scarce. A woman could pull in what was available, spread it under the skins, and hope it gave a little more distance from the cold earth. Animal skins needed attention too. They could be lifted, shaken, beaten against the ground, or snapped in the air to throw off dust and loose dirt. The motion could send ash, dry plant pieces, hair, and crumbs into the air around the body. A skin that had rested under several people could release the smell of smoke, sweat, and old warmth when moved. The woman doing the shaking might breathe that smell in before the skin settled again. The shaking could remove what sat on the surface. It could throw out bits of dried mud, loosened hair, small bones, plant fragments, and insects that had not hidden too deeply. But it could not pull out what had soaked into the skin. Sweat that had dried into the inner surface stayed there. Hair oil remained near the places where heads had rested. Body fluids could sink into seams, folds, and rough patches. A hide could look cleaner after shaking while still holding much of the night inside it. Sunlight helped when it was available. A skin laid in the sun could dry. Damp grass could lose some of its wetness. Warmth could make insects leave the surface. But sunlight did not erase old smell. It did not remove grease from the inside of a hide. It did not pull every small egg or speck from the folds. Neanderthal women could use the sun as a tool, but the sun could only do part of the work. Fire helped similarly. Holding or hanging skins near heat could dry damp patches and make the sleeping place feel safer to use again. Yet fire added smoke. A hide that smelled of sweat could become a hide that smelled of sweat and smoke. Heat could bring old body odour back up before covering it. Women near the fire could feel the warmth working, while also watching ash drift back onto the material they had just cleaned. The folds of the skins were the hardest places. An edge curled under itself could trap grit. A thick corner could hold dampness. A crease used again and again could hide tiny eggs, dead insects, skin flakes, or food dust. Fingers could run along the folds and pick out the largest pieces, but the smallest things could stay. The bedding might be improved, not purified. Their hands carried the result of that work. Dirt from bedding could collect under the nails. Grease from the skin could coat the fingertips. A crushed insect or damp plant fibre could stick to the palm. After cleaning the bed, those same hands might touch the face, lift a child, prepare food, or adjust a covering. The dirt removed from one place did not vanish. Some of it simply moved onto the body. Smell could cling to wrists after the work ended. Cleaning the sleeping place could also make the skin itch. Dust shaken from hides could land on the arms and chest. Loose ash could settle in hair. Plant fragments could cling to damp legs. A woman who had just wiped the body might become dusty again by repairing the place where the body would sleep. In that way, hygiene turned in circles, from body to bedding and back to body. There may have been no perfect time to do this. Morning brought hunger, cold, children, fire, and work. Evening brought tired bodies and the need for warmth. If the bedding was too wet, it had to be changed. If it was only unpleasant, it might wait. Neanderthal women may have judged it by touch, smell, and the feeling of insects or grit against skin. Even after the best effort, the sleeping place would still keep something. A dry upper layer could hide dampness below. A shaken skin could hide old sweat in the inner surface. A warmed hide could feel better while carrying eggs in a fold. The body would lie down again because rest mattered. Perfect cleanliness was not part of the arrangement. The quiet irony was that making the bed cleaner could cover Neanderthal women with the very dust they were trying to remove. A modern comparison would be shaking out a smoky shared blanket, replacing damp grass by hand, then sleeping on it again because there was nowhere cleaner to go. The uncomfortable truth is that their bedding could be improved each day without ever becoming truly clean. The bed could be shaken, dried, rebuilt, and made less foul for Neanderthal women. Yet the deepest dampness, smallest eggs, and hidden scraps could remain inside the folds. When waste came too close to that sleeping place, the problem would no longer be only sweat, smoke, and old bedding. Waste could come closer to sleep than anyone would want to imagine. For women in a Neanderthal group, There was no toilet to step into, no drain to carry filth away, and no sealed vessel to keep smell separate from the body. The same shelter that held warmth, children, food, skins, and tired bodies could also sit near the places where urine, feces, and dirty bedding had been left. In decent weather, moving away from the sleeping area made sense. Neanderthal women could walk beyond the main fire, beyond the food, and away from the places where children rested. A patch of ground, snow, leaves, or stones could serve for relieving the body. Distance helped. It reduced smell, kept flies farther away, and made it less likely that hands or feet would carry waste back to the bedding. But distance was not always possible. Cold nights made the body reluctant to leave warmth. A sick woman might be too weak to walk far. A child might not wake in time. An injured person could soil the bedding before anyone could help. When the body was tired, freezing, feverish, or in pain, the clean choice could become impossible. Survival often shortened the distance between waste and rest. For Neanderthal women, this mattered because their bodies were the ones cleaning much of it. A child who urinated near the sleeping skins had to be moved, damp grass had to be pulled away. A soiled hide had to be lifted, shaken, scraped, or carried toward air and light. Hands that had touched the face, food, and hair now had to touch waste mixed with bedding. One patch of dirty grass could spread the problem. Feces or urine could soak into plant material, then touch the underside of a hide. When that hide was pulled aside, moisture could smear onto the hands. When the body lay near it later, the smell could rise again with warmth. A small mistake near the sleeping place could mark skin, bedding, and fingers. Urine may have been the more common trouble. It could dry into the bedding and leave a sharp smell. A sleeping child, a frightened child, a sick adult, or someone trapped by cold could leave dampness close to others. Neanderthal women might drag out the wettest grass, rub the skin with water, or place a drier layer over the spot. The source could be reduced but not always removed. Feces were harder. They could cling to grass, hides, feet, fingers, and hair near the ground. A piece hidden in darkness could be stepped on. A hand feeling for bedding could press into it. If the smell was weak under smoke and old hide odour, the problem might be found only after contact. By then, the body was already involved. There was no clean scooping tool reserved only for waste. A stick, bone, stone, grass bundle, old hide scrap, or bare hand might be used. Afterward, that object needed to be thrown away, rinsed, scraped, or left aside. The hands still had to be dealt with. Cold water could rinse the filth, but smell and invisible residue could remain under nails and in cracked skin. The sleeping place made waste disturbing because bodies returned to it. Neanderthal women could wipe themselves, move soiled grass, and shake skins. But if any damp patch remained, a shoulder, hip, thigh, or hand might touch it later. The body could become dirty during rest rather than work. Dirt from waste did not need much movement to spread. Warm skin and pressure were enough. The same closeness that kept people alive also made separation difficult. Children slept near adults for warmth. Sick people needed help close by. Older people might not move quickly. Women caring for them could not leave waste alone until morning. A wet patch near a child had to be handled. A fouled sleeping surface had to be made less dangerous before another body settled into it. Smell may not have been the main warning. Smoke, animal skins, sweat, old food, and damp earth already filled the air. A faint waste smell could hide inside the larger smell of the shelter. Touch might reveal it first. A wet hand. A sticky piece of grass. A warm, sour patch beneath a hide. That discovery would come through the body rather than through sight. Cleaning it could make the cleaners dirty. Neanderthal women pulling away soiled bedding could feel moisture reach the fingers. A damp edge could brush the wrist. A piece of feces could break apart in grass. Ash from the fire might be rubbed over the area to dry it or dull the smell, but ash did not make it clean. It only changed the surface. Cold made every answer worse. Taking soiled material outside exposed the body to air. Washing hands in cold water could sting. Leaving the material inside kept smell and danger near the bed. Moving children away from the wet place could wake them and chill them. Each solution had a cost. The cleanest choice was not always the safest or the most possible. The body paid for those compromises. Hands used to remove waste later touched food, hair, skin, and children again. Feet that stepped near dirty grass could carry residue onto sleeping skins. Thighs or hips resting beside a damp patch could pick up smell. If a woman already had raw skin from rubbing, waste near that skin could sting or cause worse trouble. The most difficult part was how ordinary this could be. Not every night was a disaster. Many times people likely went away from the shelter and kept waste at a better distance. But when weather, illness, childhood, injury, or exhaustion interfered, waste could enter the sleeping area quietly. A single soiled layer of grass could turn warmth into contamination. The harsh irony was that the bed kept Neanderthal women away from cold ground, but one dirty patch could make that bed more foul than the ground itself. A modern comparison would be sleeping beside a shared campfire, with no bathroom, no sealed bin, and a damp bedding layer that might already hold waste. What feels most disturbing is how quickly care for children, the sick, or the exhausted could bring human filth back onto the hands. Waste near the sleeping place could turn grass, hides, hands, and skin into one dirty chain. Neanderthal women could move the worst material away, but smell and residue might remain in folds and damp places. The body still had to be wiped afterward, and that task depended on whatever could be found nearby. After relieving the body, cleaning was probably one of the most uncomfortable moments in daily life. For women in a Neanderthal group, the task had to be done with whatever the ground, the season, and the weather allowed. There was no paper, no clean cloth prepared for that purpose, no closed room, and no warm stream waiting nearby. The body still needed wiping, but the materials available could help or hurt. Moss may have been one of the gentler choices. When damp, it could hold water and press softly against the skin. It might lift away urine, feces, or old moisture without scraping too harshly. But moss was not always available. It could be frozen, dirty, full of grit, or growing in a place too far from the shelter. A soft material was useful only if women could find it when the body needed it. Leaves could work in warmer seasons, especially broad leaves that held together when folded. They could wipe quickly and be thrown aside, yet leaves could tear. Some could be dry, brittle, rough, or covered with dirt. A leaf that looked usable might break against damp skin and leave pieces behind. Neanderthal women had to judge texture by touch, because the wrong material could turn a simple cleaning into a sting. Soft grass could be gathered into a small bundle. It could remove the worst mess after urination or defecation, but grass changed with season and dryness. Fresh grass might bend and wipe gently. Dry grass could scratch like tiny blades. If the skin was already sore from walking, sweat, or rubbing under animal skins, even a small scrape could feel sharp. A private place of the body could become raw from one careless wipe, especially after long walks over cold, uneven ground. Old animal hide could also be used. A small piece of worn skin might feel smoother than grass or leaves. It could be kept for wiping, drying, or handling dirtier tasks. But old hide carried its own problems. It might already hold smoke, grease, sweat, or dried matter from earlier use. Pressing it against the body could remove fresh filth, while adding older smell and residue back onto the skin. Water was useful, but cold water could make the task painful. A quick rinse after urination might ease the smell and wetness. After defecation, water could clean more deeply than leaves or grass, but cold water against sensitive skin could bite. In winter or near icy streams, it could make the thighs, belly, and groin tense at once. Neanderthal women might wash quickly because the cold became worse than the dirt. The position of the body made it harder. Cleaning after defecation meant crouching, bending, reaching, and balancing on uneven ground. The feet could be cold, the legs could shake. Animal skins might have to be held away from the mess. A hand had to reach behind or between the legs, often without seeing clearly. The task was awkward even before the problem of materials began. Too little cleaning left trouble behind. Feces could remain near the skin and mix with sweat. Urine could dry into a sharp smell. Dampness could stay between the thighs. When animal skins were wrapped back around the hips, warmth trapped it all in place. Neanderthal women could then walk, sit, and sleep with waste residue close to skin already softened by sweat. Too much cleaning created a different problem. Repeated wiping with grass, leaves, or hide could irritate the most sensitive areas. A rough edge could open a tiny scratch. A dry leaf could drag across skin that was already sore. If water was used after scraping, it could sting in the broken places. The body could end up cleaner and more painful than before. The hands were part of the danger. Fingers used for wiping could touch feces, urine, damp moss, dirty leaves, or old hide. A quick rinse might remove the visible filth, but the nails could still keep residue. Cold water and rubbing could clean the palm while leaving material in cracks near the fingertips. Under weak light, the hand could look acceptable, while smell or invisible dirt remained. Those same hands had to return to life. They might lift a child, prepare food, move hair away from the face, touch a sore place, or adjust a covering at the waist. There were no separate tools for body waste and food handling. Daily tasks waited on the same fingers. Cleaning after waste did not remove the hands from the rest of the world. It only made them ready enough to continue. For women caring for children, the problem doubled. A child could soil the body, bedding, or nearby grass. The child then needed cleaning with the same rough choices: moss, leaves, grass, water, or hide. Small skin could scratch even more easily. The hands that wiped the child might then comfort the child, feed the child, or clean themselves in a hurry before another task began. Sick or injured people made the work heavier. A weak body might not move far enough away from the sleeping area. Someone unable to wipe properly might need help. Neanderthal women could become responsible for cleaning another body after waste, then cleaning their own hands afterward. This was care, but it was care done with cold water, dirty materials, and skin that could easily break. The smell could stay even after the visible mess was gone. Smoke from the fire might hide it for a while, animal skins could cover it, but warmth from the body could bring it back. A woman walking after a poor cleaning might feel dampness or smell something sour rising from the covered area. The body would know that the task had not been finished well, even if nothing could be seen. The plain irony was that the softest available material might still be dirty enough to make clean skin dirty again. A modern comparison would be using damp moss, leaves, or a scrap of smoky leather after the bathroom, then washing with icy water and no soap. The hardest detail to sit with is how quickly a necessary act of cleaning could become another source of scratches, smell, and risk. After waste, Neanderthal women had to clean the body with materials that were never perfectly soft, dry, or clean. A poor wipe left dampness and filth behind, while a rough wipe could mark sensitive skin with small cuts. Blood would bring an even more regular problem, one that returned inside crowded shelters, with almost no trace left for the earth to preserve. Monthly bleeding would have created a regular hygiene problem for Neanderthal women, yet almost none of it could leave a clear trace behind. Blood, moss, grass, soft hide, and damp skin could disappear into soil, smoke, time, and decay. Archaeology may preserve bones, stone tools, hearths, and animal remains, but the ordinary work of managing menstrual blood would mostly vanish. That absence does not mean the problem was small. It only means the materials were fragile. Anything used to absorb blood would likely have been soft, plant-based, animal-based, or temporary. Moss could rot, grass could dry and break, small pieces of hide could be reused until worn down. None of these things had much chance of surviving for thousands of years in a way that clearly says what they were used for. For Neanderthal women, the bleeding itself would still return. The body did not wait for good weather, clean water, privacy, or enough dry material. Blood could begin during walking, gathering, carrying, scraping, or sleeping. It could arrive while the body was already sweaty under animal skins. It could mix with old dirt, urine, smoke, and body oil before anyone had time to clean it properly. A soft material would be needed first. Damp moss could absorb blood and feel less harsh against the skin. Soft grass could be folded or packed in place. A small piece of hide could press against the body more firmly. Each option had problems. Moss might be wet, dirty, or unavailable. Grass might scratch. Hide might already smell of smoke, grease, and old sweat. The area between the thighs was already difficult to keep dry. During menstruation, that problem became more regular and harder to hide. Blood could run down the inner thighs when no material was ready. It could dry on the skin in dark streaks. It could stick to hair, folds, and the inside of animal coverings. Once dried, it would not come away easily with a light wipe. Cold water could help, but it could also punish the body. Washing blood from the thighs or groin might require crouching near a stream, opening the coverings, and touching sensitive skin with water that cut like ice. A quick rinse might remove the freshest blood, but older stains could remain. If the body became too cold, cleaning had to stop before the work was truly finished. The smell would be difficult inside a crowded shelter. Menstrual blood does not stay separate from the other smells of life. It could mix with smoke dyed, sweat, bedding, and old animal fat. In a close group where people slept, ate, worked, and warmed themselves near one another, perfect privacy would be impossible. A stain or odour could be noticed even when no one spoke of it. Neanderthal women may have tried to manage this quietly by changing material when possible. A bloodied piece of moss or grass could be pulled away and replaced, but replacement depended on what was nearby. In cold seasons, soft plants could be harder to find. In wet weather, clean dry material might be scarce. A woman could end up using what was available rather than what felt comfortable. Animal hide might have been more durable, but it created another problem. A small soft piece could be held close to the body, but once soaked with blood, it needed cleaning. Blood could cling to the surface, dry at the edges, and leave a strong smell when warmed again. Throwing it away might waste a useful material. Keeping it meant dealing with the stain later. That stain could spread. Blood on the thighs could touch the inside of a hip covering. Blood on a small, absorbent piece could leak into bedding. Blood on fingers during adjustment could mark the hands, then the waist, then the face or hair if touched without thinking. The body could try to contain the mess, but daily movement kept shifting it. There was also discomfort from pressure. Any material placed between the legs had to stay there during walking, sitting, and crouching. A folded grass bundle could move out of place. Moss could crumble, hide could rub the skin. If the material was too thick, it could press painfully. If it was too thin, blood could pass through it. Each adjustment required hands that then needed cleaning. The hands became part of the problem again. Neanderthal women adjusting a blood-soaked material would get blood on the fingers. A quick wipe on grass, water, or hide could remove the red colour, but smell and residue might remain under the nails. Those same hands still had to touch food, children, hair, tools, and bedding. Menstruation made the distance between private hygiene and public work very small. Sleeping during bleeding could be worse. The body relaxed. Blood could move without being noticed immediately. A piece of moss or hide could shift during the night. The thighs could press together. Bedding beneath the hips could absorb what leaked through. By morning, women might wake with dried blood on the skin, on the covering, or in the grass beneath them. Changing the sleeping material was not always simple. The bloodied layer had to be found, touched, pulled away, and carried out or hidden. A skin could be shaken, scraped, or held near heat. Grass could be replaced if more was available. But if the shelter was cold or everyone was waking together, the work could not be completely private. The body made a monthly need that the group setting could not fully conceal. The emotional side was probably practical rather than dramatic. Neanderthal women may have known bleeding as a normal feature of the body. Still, normal did not mean easy. It meant repeating the same careful management again and again, with cold water, rough materials, shared sleeping places, and no reliable way to stay dry. The problem was ordinary, but it touched skin, smell, movement, and dignity. Even when the bleeding slowed, traces could remain. Dried blood might stay on the inner thighs. A hide at the waist could keep a brown stain. Hair near the groin could feel sticky. A piece of reused material could harden after drying. The body could move on to gathering, carrying, cooking, and caring, while the marks of menstruation stayed hidden under animal skins. The quiet cruelty was that a regular body process could become a dirty task simply because clean soft material was never guaranteed. A modern comparison would be trying to manage a period outdoors with moss, grass, cold water, and a small piece of smoky leather. What feels most human here is not shock, the steady effort to keep working while the body kept bleeding. Menstruation gave Neanderthal women a regular hygiene burden that left almost nothing for archaeology to preserve. Blood could be absorbed, wiped, hidden, or left to dry when moss, grass, and small skins were scarce. Once those bloodied materials had to be used again, the problem moved from the body into the things pressed closest against it. A blood-soaked material could not always be thrown away. For women in a Neanderthal group, moss and grass might be gathered again when the season was kind, but a soft piece of animal skin cost more time and labour. It had to be cut, softened, scraped, dried, and kept usable. Once it absorbed menstrual blood, the problem did not end with removing it from the body. Fresh blood could be rinsed more easily than dried blood. If a piece was changed quickly, cold water might loosen the red stain before it sank deeper into the surface. But daily work did not always allow quick changing. Women still had to move, gather, carry, sit near fire, and care for children. A bloodied piece might stay against the body until the blood became sticky, dark, and harder to remove. When blood dried on skin or hide, it clung tightly. A little water could soften the surface, but the stain might need rubbing, pressing, or scraping. Neanderthal women could use fingers, grass, moss, or a dull stone edge to lift it away. Each method brought discomfort. Fingers became dirty again. Grass could tear, stone could roughen the hide. Water made everything cold. The smell would change as the blood aged. Fresh blood had one smell. Dried blood warmed by body heat had another. If a small skin was kept close to the groin or tucked into a hip covering, it could hold that odour along with sweat and smoke. Even after rinsing, the scent could remain in the material. When it was placed back against warm skin, the smell could return. Throwing the material away was easier when it was moss or grass. Those could be pulled apart and left outside if more could be found. But soft hide was different. It came from an animal, and every usable piece mattered. A woman might not waste it after one use, especially in cold weather, when skins were needed for covering, bedding, wiping, wrapping, and warmth. Reuse was not strange, it was practical. The washing itself could hurt the hands, cold water could numb the fingers. Rubbing blood from hide could leave the palms stiff and sore. If old blood stuck near an edge, nails might be used to pick it loose. The same nails could still carry ash, soil, or body dirt. Cleaning the material could stain the hands again, then those hands needed cleaning before touching food or children. Drying brought another choice. The material could be placed near fire to dry faster. Heat could pull moisture out and make the piece usable again before the body needed it. But fire also changed the surface. A soft piece of skin could stiffen if held too close, smoke could settle into it. The material might dry quickly, but return to the body harder, smellier, and less gentle. If it dried too much, it could scrape. A stiff edge against the inner thigh or groin could rub with each step. If it stayed too wet, it could chill and irritate the skin. Neanderthal women were caught between a dry piece that scratched and a damp piece that softened the skin until it burned. Neither choice was clean comfort. Both were the only ways to continue. Using a piece again before it fully dried could create steady soreness. Damp hide or moss pressed against sensitive skin could keep the area wet for hours. Menstrual blood, sweat, urine traces, and water from washing could mix together. The skin could turn red. Walking could make it rub. Sitting could press it harder. By the second or third day, a place meant to be protected could feel raw. The body did not pause for better materials. Bleeding could continue while the cleaned piece dried. If no replacement was ready, a woman might have to use the same one again while it was still damp. The cold touch could make the body tense, the dampness could remain under animal skins. Heat from walking could then make the area warmer, stickier, and more irritated. A small mistake could stay with them through the day, because the material touched the most sensitive skin each time the hips shifted, each time the thighs moved, and each time the body warmed again under skins quietly. There was no hidden laundry place for this work. A bloodied material had to be rinsed, rubbed, dried, or replaced somewhere near the life of the group. Smoke, children, tools, hides, and other bodies were close. Privacy could be limited. A woman might turn away, crouch by water, or work quickly near the edge of the shelter. Still, the stain, smell, and wetness were difficult to keep completely separate. Bedding could be affected too. If a reused material leaked, blood could reach the grass or hide beneath the hips. That bedding then needed attention. The same cycle began again, pulling away damp grass, shaking a skin, scraping a stain, and trying to dry what could not be fully cleaned. One small bloodied piece could spread the work into several surfaces. The most difficult part was repetition. Menstrual bleeding lasted more than one moment. A material used in the morning might need washing by evening. Another might be needed at night. Cold water, smoke drying, rough texture, damp reuse, and private soreness could repeat day after day. Neanderthal women could not solve it once. They had to manage it until the bleeding ended. Even after the blood stopped, the materials could keep memory of it. A piece of hide could darken. A smoky smell could cover a sourer one beneath. The skin of the thighs could remain tender. The groin could itch after days of dampness. Women might continue wiping, airing, and adjusting long after the bleeding slowed because the body still carried the effects. The small cruelty was that the material meant to absorb blood could become another thing that injured the skin. A modern comparison would be washing a blood-stained pad in icy water, drying it beside smoke, then wearing it again while it was stiff or damp. The detail that stays with the body is the repetition, not one terrible moment, but several days of rubbing, rinsing, drying, and using again. Bloodied materials could be washed, scraped, smoked, and placed back close to the body, but they could not always become soft or clean again. For Neanderthal women, reuse could mean dampness, stiffness, odour, and soreness building through the days of bleeding. A heavier flow of blood and fluid would come with birth, and the body would have far less time to prepare for it. After birth, the dirtiest place could be the place where Neanderthal women had just survived the hardest work of the body. Blood, water, mucus and birth fluid could soak the skin beneath them. Grass and leaves could take in what passed through. A body that had just pushed out a child might be left resting on materials that were already wet, warm, and carrying the smell of blood. Birth did not happen on a clean bed. It would have happened near the same fire, the same skins, and the same ground that held daily life. The surface beneath the body might have been prepared with grass, hides, or soft plants, but those materials could not stay clean for long. During labour, fluid could run down the thighs, pool beneath the hips, and sink into whatever had been placed underneath. For Neanderthal women, the pain did not end when the child came out. The groin, thighs, and lower belly could be swollen, bruised, or torn. Each movement could sting. Sitting up could pull at sore skin. Turning to the side could press blood and wet grass against the body. Even breathing deeply might move the abdomen enough to remind the body of what had just happened. Cleaning after birth would be difficult because the injured areas were the same areas that needed the most care. Blood could dry in the hair between the thighs. Fluid could cling to folds of skin. A piece of grass could stick where the skin was raw. A soft hide could absorb blood, then press it back against the body. Nothing around them was sterile. Everything was only less dirty or more dirty. The hands helping the birth were part of the danger. Women assisting could have touched soil, meat, ash, skins, firewood, children, and their own bodies earlier that day. A quick rinse might remove visible dirt, but not everything under the nails. Those hands could support the legs, wipe blood, lift the child, move bedding, and touch torn tissue. Care was necessary, but care was not clean. Water could be used, but it would not feel gentle. Cold water on swollen skin could bite sharply. If there were small tears, the sting could be worse. Washing too much could chill the body after exhaustion. Washing too little could leave blood and fluid against open tissue. Neanderthal women after birth were caught in a hard place, between pain from cleaning and danger from not cleaning. The bedding beneath them could become heavy quickly. Blood and birth fluid could soak through the top skin into grass below. If the grass was not moved, it could grow cold and sour under the hips. If it was pulled away too roughly, sticky pieces could tug at the body. Replacing it required hands, strength, and dry material. None of those were guaranteed. The newborn changed the urgency. A child that breathed had to be kept warm, lifted, wiped, and held close. The same hands that touched bloodied bedding might touch the baby. The same skins that held birth fluid might be pulled around both bodies for warmth. The mother needed cleaning, but the child needed heat. Warmth could win before cleanliness had a chance. After birth, bleeding could continue. Fluid from the womb could leave the body for days. It could soak moss, grass, or soft hide placed between the thighs. If those materials were not changed, smell could rise. If they were changed too often, the sore skin could be rubbed again and again. The body needed rest, but the bleeding kept asking for attention. The private areas were not private in a moment like this. Other women might need to look, touch, lift and wipe. They might need to check whether blood was still flowing heavily. They might need to move the mother away from a soaked patch. In a crowded shelter, privacy could shrink to the space created by bodies turning aside. The work was intimate because survival required it. The smell would be strong. Blood, fluid, smoke, sweat, damp grass, and animal skins could mix around the mother and child. Smoke might cover some of it, but warmth would bring it back. A hide laid over the body could hold the odour close. Hair near the thighs could catch fluid. Hands could carry the smell from the bedding to the child, the fire, and the food. If a tear was present, every material became more serious. Grass could scratch, hide could stick, moss could leave damp pieces behind. Fingers could press dirt into the wound. A small tear did not have to look terrible to become dangerous. It only had to stay wet, warm, and exposed to the dirt of the shelter. The mother might not have had the strength to clean herself. Exhaustion after birth could make even sitting up difficult. Another woman might have to wipe blood from the thighs, lift away soaked grass, and place a cleaner layer beneath the hips. That helper was giving care, but the materials still carried risk. The body depended on hands that could not be made truly clean. The worst part was that success did not end the danger. The child might cry, the mother might still be alive. The group might feel relief, yet underneath that relief injured tissue remained close to blood, damp bedding, body fluid, ash, and old skins. A dirty surface did not become safe because the birth was over. It stayed against the places most likely to be harmed. A small delay in cleaning could matter. A damp patch under the hips could cool the skin, while a warm patch closer to the body could feed smell. If mothers shivered, moving the bedding might seem cruel. If the bedding stayed, the same wetness remained pressed against torn places that needed quiet, air, and time more than anything. The cruel irony was that surviving birth could leave Neanderthal women lying in the very mess their bodies most needed to escape. A modern comparison would be giving birth on smoky animal skins and wet grass, then trying to recover without clean sheets, gloves, soap, or warm water. What makes this so hard to ignore is that the danger began after the relief, when everyone wanted the worst to be finished. Birth could leave Neanderthal women alive, exhausted, and lying on materials filled with blood, fluid, smoke, and grass. The child might breathe, but the injured body still had to deal with dirt pressed close to torn skin. When fever appeared in the days after birth, no one could see the danger moving inside. After birth, the danger did not end when the baby cried. For women in a Neanderthal group, the days after delivery could be slow, painful, and dirty. Blood and fluid could keep leaving the body long after the child was wrapped and held. The mother might be alive, but the injured parts of the body still needed cleaning again and again. This flow after birth could last for many days. It could be thinner than the first blood, but it still had to be absorbed, wiped, or caught by whatever material was available. Moss, grass, leaves, or soft hide could be placed close to the body. These materials could help for a while, but they became wet quickly. Once wet, they held smell, warmth, and contact against skin that was already swollen or torn. Neanderthal women recovering from birth may not have been able to move easily. The thighs could ache, the belly could feel heavy and sore. The groin could sting when the body shifted. Sitting, standing, turning, and crouching could all pull at tender places. Even reaching down to adjust a damp material could hurt. Cleaning the body was necessary, but the body might have been too exhausted to do it well. Other women likely had to help. Hands could lift a hip, pull out wet grass, place a cleaner layer, wipe blood from the thighs, or check a place that looked swollen. This help could be careful, but it could not be sterile. The same hands might have touched firewood, bedding, children, meat, soil, or hides earlier that day. A rinse in cold water could remove visible dirt, but cracks around the nails could hold more than the eyes could see. The materials had to be changed before they turned worse. Damp moss against injured skin could begin to smell. Grass soaked with blood and fluid could flatten into a sour layer. A small hide used to catch the flow could hold warmth and odour. If the material stayed too long, it could make the skin softer and more irritated. If it was changed too often, wiping could hurt the same places again. There was no clean pile of pads, cloths, or sheets. Every replacement had to come from the nearby world. Moss had to be found, grass had to be dry enough. Hide had to be available and soft enough. In cold or wet seasons, better material could be scarce. Neanderthal women may have used what was tolerable rather than what was truly clean. A small tear after birth could become the centre of the risk. It did not need to be large. It only had to sit near blood, damp material, soil, feces, dirty hands, or old hide. A tiny wound near the groin could swell. It could become hot. It could make every cleaning painful. When the mother moved, the skin could reopen. When material rubbed against it, pain could spread. Waste made the danger worse. After birth, the body still had to urinate and defecate. Wiping those areas while bleeding continued would be difficult. Feces on the hand, grass, or nearby ground could reach a torn place if cleaning was rushed. Urine could sting damaged skin. A mother who was too weak to walk far might have waste closer to the bedding than anyone wanted. The boundary between birth fluid, waste, and bedding could become dangerously thin. The fire could dry some materials, but not make them clean. A damp hide could be held near heat until it felt usable again. Moss or grass could be replaced or warmed. Yet smoke added its own smell. Heat could bring old odours out of bloodied skins. A piece that felt dry might still carry old fluid inside. When pressed back against the body, it could warm again and release what it held. The first signs of deeper trouble may have looked ordinary at first. Pain after birth was expected. Weakness was expected, bleeding was expected. A mother who looked tired did not automatically seem doomed. But if a small wound began to swell, if the lower belly grew more tender, if the body became hot, the danger had moved beyond dirt on the surface. The problem was no longer something that could simply be wiped away. A fever would have been frightening because no one could see what was happening inside. Neanderthal women could feel heat on the skin, shaking in the body, thirst, weakness, and confusion. Others could touch the forehead and know that something was wrong. They could offer water, warmth, rest, and cleaning, but they could not see infection spreading beneath the skin or inside the body. The cause could remain hidden. This is where hygiene became a thin line. Change the wet material early enough, and the skin might calm. Leave it too long, and soreness might grow. Use a rough piece, and a tear could open wider. Touch the wound with dirty fingers, and something unseen could enter. Wash too much with cold water, and the exhausted body could shiver. Wash too little, and old fluid stayed close. The mother also had to care for the child. A newborn needed warmth, feeding, and skin contact. The same body trying to heal had to hold another body close. Blood, sweat, milk, smoke, and damp bedding could gather in the same space. Neanderthal women caring for mothers and infants had to manage both lives with partly clean hands. If fever grew stronger, the shelter might only see weakness deepening. The mother could sweat, the skin could turn hot then cold. The body could shake while still lying on materials that needed changing. A woman who had survived birth could begin slipping away days later, while the group had no clear way to understand why. They could see the suffering, but not the hidden spread beneath it. The bitter irony was that the days meant for recovery could demand even more cleaning than the birth itself. A modern comparison would be healing from childbirth without sterile pads, clean sheets, gloves, soap, antibiotics, or warm private washing. The most disturbing point is that a tiny dirty contact could become a fever no one in the group could explain. Post-birth hygiene could decide whether Neanderthal women healed or weakened under a fever that had no visible source. Wet moss, bloodied hide, dirty hands, waste, and small tears all stayed close to the body during the most fragile days. Even after the bleeding slowed, the mouth, teeth, and small wounds on the hands could keep other kinds of dirt trapped for a very long time. Long after smoke had been wiped from the face, dirt could remain hidden inside the mouth and inside small cuts. For women in a Neanderthal group, these places were harder to clean than arms, legs, hair, or bedding. Teeth held food in narrow gaps. Wounds held soil in torn skin. Both could look ordinary from the outside, while keeping trouble deep in places no quick rinse could reach. The mouth collected pieces from every meal. Tough meat could leave fibers between teeth. Roots, seeds, bark, and plant matter could press into the gums. Small bits of cooked food could stay near the back teeth where fingers had difficulty reaching. Neanderthal women could feel these pieces with the tongue, but feeling them was not the same as removing them. A small stick could help. It could be sharpened, chewed soft, or used like a pick. Fingernails could also scrape at something trapped near the gum. The motion might bring relief when a piece of meat finally came free, but the stick itself was not clean. It could have touched dirt, ash, or hands before entering the mouth. The gums could bleed easily if the pressure was too hard. A rough stick pushed between teeth might cut soft tissue. A nail could scrape the gum while trying to pull out food. Blood could mix with saliva, old food, and smoke taste. The mouth might feel cleaner for a moment, but the bleeding gum became another place where dirt could settle. What remained between the teeth could harden over time, Food, minerals from saliva, smoke residue, and fine dirt could build near the gum line. This hardened layer could sit around the roots of teeth and stay there for years. Neanderthal teeth found by archaeologists often preserve heavy wear and calculus, and that gives a sense of how much the mouth could hold when cleaning stayed limited. A painful tooth would be a serious problem. If a tooth cracked, wore down, or became infected, there was no simple way to clean the inside. Cold water could rinse the mouth, but it could not reach the deep pain. A stick could remove food around the area, but not sickness beneath the gum. Neanderthal women could chew on the other side, press the jaw, or avoid harder pieces, but the damaged place remained. Bleeding gums brought the same difficulty. A gum that swelled or opened could catch more food. The mouth stayed warm and wet. Each meal pushed new material into the sore area. A woman could rinse, spit, pick and rub, but the gum line was never like skin on the arm. It could not be laid open, scraped clean and dried beside the fire. It stayed hidden, soft and constantly used. The smell of the mouth could become stronger when food stayed trapped. Smoke might cover some odors in the shelter, but a painful mouth could still taste sour to the person carrying it. Neanderthal women may have noticed bed taste swellness and a dull ache that returned whenever they chewed. The danger was not only discomfort. An infection near the tooth could weaken the whole body. Hands carried a similar hidden problem. A cut on the palm or finger might be rinsed quickly, but the surface did not tell the whole story. Neanderthal women handled soil, hides, meat, bones, plants, ash and children with the same hands. A stone edge could slice the skin. A rough hide could tear a knuckle. A thorn or splinter could open a small line that filled with dirt before anyone had time to clean it. Cold water could remove blood from the outside. Rubbing could clear the visible mud, but inside a small cut, fat, soil, plant fibers or animal tissue could remain. If the cut was narrow, the dirt could be sealed beneath dried blood. The hand might look better by firelight while still holding the problem inside the wound. The hands could not rest for long. A sore finger still had to grip wood, pull hides, lift children and prepare food. Every task bent the wound. Every bend could reopen it, blood could return, ash could settle into it, grease from meat could slide across it. A small injury that might heal in clean surroundings could stay irritated because daily life kept touching it. The nails made wounds worse. Dirt under the nails could enter a cut when women scratched, picked, or cleaned the skin. A nail used to remove a splinter could push more material into the opening. A bitten or broken nail could scrape food from teeth, then touch a wound, then touch a child. The body had no clean tools for each need. A deeper cut from stone or bone could be more frightening. It might bleed heavily at first, then slow, then throb. If animal fat or tissue entered the wound during butchering, rinsing the surface could still leave something below. Swelling could begin around the edges. Heat could grow in the finger or palm. The hand that fed others could become painful to move. Neanderthal women may have used plant material, pressure, water, ash, or hide strips to manage wounds. Some methods could help stop bleeding or protect the skin. Others could add more dirt. A strip of hide tied around a cut might hold the wound closed, but it might also carry old sweat and grease. Covering the wound could protect it from one danger while trapping another inside. The worst wounds were not always the largest ones. A small puncture from bone, thorn, or stone could close at the surface while holding dirt deeper in. Pain might grow later. The skin could swell after the visible blood was gone. By then, the source was hidden. The body gave signs through heat, pressure, and weakness, but no one could see exactly what remained inside. The plain irony was that the hardest dirt to remove was often the dirt nobody could see, tucked under gums or sealed inside a cut. A modern comparison would be picking meat from your teeth with a dirty twig, then washing a hand wound with cold water while grease stayed inside. What feels most unsettling is how a body could look cleaned while the mouth and wounds quietly kept the danger. Teeth and cuts could hold dirt longer than skin, hair, bedding, or clothing. Neanderthal women could pick, rinse, scrape, and cover these places, but some hidden material could remain beyond sight. When a body could not reach its own wounds, scalp back, or swollen skin, survival depended on another pair of hands helping. The hands helping Neanderthal women were never perfectly clean, but they may have been the only hands that could keep another body from getting worse. A person could not see the back of the head, The scalp under thick hair was hidden. The middle of the back was hard to reach. Swollen skin under the arms, behind the neck, or between the thighs could be felt, but not easily checked. This made care depend on others. One woman could sit behind another and separate the hair with slow fingers. Smoke, grease, ash, and old sweat might cling to the strands, but the hands still searched carefully. They could find a tick near the scalp, a small scab behind the ear, a patch of dried blood, or a place where the skin had become hot and sore. The work was dirty, but leaving it alone could be worse. A sore scalp needed another pair of eyes. A wound on the back needed another hand. A woman after birth might be too weak to lift herself while blood and fluid kept leaving the body. Someone else had to pull away wet grass, move a stained hide, place a drier layer, and wipe the thighs with whatever soft material could be found. The hands doing this work could carry ash, smoke, meat grease, or soil, but they still offered the best chance of relief. The sick depend on the same care. A feverish person might sweat into bedding and lie too long on damp plants. A cut hand might swell, a bitten scalp might crust under hair, a person with stomach illness might soil the sleeping place. Neanderthal women could not solve these problems with clean cloth, soap, gloves, or medicine. They had hands, water, moss, grass, hide, sunlight, smoke, and patience. Those hands could remove the worst material, they could scrape dried blood from skin, they could lift hair away from a sore place. They could wipe fluid from the body. They could check whether a wound felt hotter than the skin around it. They could pull insects from hair, press a bleeding place, or change a damp layer before it became more foul. Nothing about this was clean in the modern sense. It was simply care inside a dirty world. The hands could also cause harm if they pressed too hard. A fingernail could scratch swollen skin, a rough wipe could reopen a wound, a piece of moss could leave grit behind. A hide strip used to cover a cut could trap old dirt against it. Every act of care carried risk, because every tool came from the same world as the dirt. Still, doing nothing could leave blood to dry, insects to remain, sweat to rot into bedding, and wounds to close around filth. This is what makes the final image quiet rather than dramatic. Neanderthal women may have lived with smoke in the hair, ash on the skin, sweat under hides, and old smells in bedding, but they were not alone inside that discomfort. One body helped another where it could. One hand lifted a strand of hair, another wiped a child, another pulled out wet grass. Another checked a red swelling near the neck. The work would have happened slowly, near the fire, in the same light that made soot settle again on faces and arms. A woman could finish wiping blood from another body, then turn back to food, children, hides, or water. A sleeping place could be made less wet, not clean. A scalp could be cleared of one insect, not made safe from all of them. A wound could be rinsed outside, not purified inside. Each improvement was small, but small improvements mattered. The body of a Neanderthal woman was not kept clean by distance from dirt. It was kept going through constant contact with it. Fire dirtied the face, but kept the cold away. Hides trapped sweat, but protected the skin from wind. Bedding absorbed fluids, but softened the ground. Hands carried old grease, but also removed blood and insects. The same things that made life filthy also made life possible. At the end of the day, the shelter would grow dim again. Bodies would move closer to warmth. Hair would fall against smoky hides. Children would press into tired arms. Damp grass might be pushed aside. A sore place might be checked one more time before sleep. Rough hands would move quietly through hair, across skin, under coverings, and over bedding, doing what they could before darkness made everything harder. The final picture is simple. Neanderthal women lived in a world where perfect cleanliness did not exist, but care still did. Their hands were rough, smoky, greasy, and not fully clean. Yet those hands could be the reason another body, warmed, wiped, checked, and kept alive through one more cold night. When we think about hygiene now, it is easy to begin with soap, warm water, towels, private rooms, fresh clothing, and clean bedding. Those things feel ordinary because they are around us every day. But for Neanderthal women, the body had to be managed with what the ground, the fire, the animal skins, and the weather allowed. Cleanliness was not a neat routine. It was a series of small decisions made while hungry children, cold air, blood, sweat, smoke, and work kept interrupting. A face could be wiped while the hair stayed smoky. Hands could be rinsed while grease stayed under the nails. A sore place could be cleaned. while the bedding beneath it still held old dampness. This does not make them careless. It makes their lives easier to understand. They were dealing with bodies that needed warmth before comfort, food before freshness, and survival before anything that looked clean from a modern point of view. The strange thing is that much of their hygiene was not about removing every trace of dirt. It was about keeping dirt from becoming pain. It was about wiping the skin before it cracked, changing wet grass before it turned foul, scraping a hide before it rotted, checking hair before insects stayed too long, and helping a weak body before the mess around it became dangerous. It was rough, limited, and often unpleasant, but it was still care. And maybe that is the quiet lesson left in these old daily tasks. Not a grand lesson, not a speech, just a small human detail. Long before clean rooms and clean tools, people were still leaning close to one another, using imperfect hands to make another body a little safer, a little warmer, and a little less alone. Thank you for spending this time here tonight. Rest, stay warm, and good night.